Some days just don't go your way. No matter what you do or say, you wish you could just hide under the covers and avoid it all. As the head of the household, you carry a weight of responsibility, even when you wish you didn't. My day started abruptly at 7 a.m. when the police woke me up to report a break-in at my bar. Rushing out, I found my car had a flat tire, adding to the frustration of only having had 4 hours of sleep. Borrowing my wife's car, I headed to the bar, only to discover most of the liquor supply stolen, with the entrance smashed in. It looks like it'll be at least 2 weeks before we can reopen. The police labeled it as a robbery, and after the insurance agent documented the damage, I boarded up the entrance, awaiting repairs. Thankfully, insurance will cover the losses until we're back in business. Around lunchtime, as I was about to hop into my wife's car to head home, I heard someone shouting, "Melody, wait!" I turned to see a man rushing towards me, only to stop abruptly when he realized his mistake. He apologized, explaining he had the wrong car, then hurried off. Later, at home, I described the encounter to my wife, Melody, but she couldn't place the man. When she asked why I had to borrow her car earlier, I explained about the break-in at the bar and my tire trouble. After a quick sandwich, I fixed my truck's burst valve stem, then made a pit stop for jeans, t-shirts, and a MAGA hat. Returning home, I found Melody's note saying she'd gone shopping. My late shifts on Fridays and Saturdays meant I often arrived home in the morning. After 12 years, I finally shaved my beard. After showering, I got ready to leave, forgetting to brush my hair, leaving my curls wild. The change was so drastic, I almost didn't recognize myself. Despite this, I decided to explore other bars in town that night. Heading out as usual, I found Melody still absent. Sneaking into the bar through the back, I changed into my new clothes and found some reading glasses to complete my transformed appearance. With a clean shave and glasses, I looked much younger, almost like a college student. Realizing my truck was too recognizable, I called a cab to take me to National Car Rental, where I opted for a white, inconspicuous Ford. Starting from the north, I worked my way through town, observing and learning. At each stop, I studied the staff, ambiance, clientele, and prices, gathering insights for when I reopened my own establishment. Often, after getting what I needed, I'd leave without finishing my beer. It was at the 7th spot, a hangout for university students by the Mississippi River, where everything changed. Walking into New City Jack, I spotted my wife, Melody, dancing carnally with another man. Anger surged through me, especially realizing he was the same man who had called out to her at lunch. It was clear she'd been lying to me. Melody wore an eye-catching outfit, revealing plenty of cleavage. As a bartender, I knew appearances could be misleading. Seeking a place to observe, a guy offered me a seat for buying a table. Surprised, I accepted and ordered a double gin and tonic. They were regulars, explaining the busy weekends due to university students. Later, I casually asked about a woman in revealing attire. The redhead informed me she's Melody Corbett, often seen with her boss, Payne Richards. They're regulars, possibly more than friends, given Melody's complicated situation with her husband working out of town. Additionally, they often leave together before the last set of the band. I thanked the table, bought another round, then said goodnight. Outside, as I deflated her car tires, I was caught by a redhead named Carrie Ann, who worked with them. She revealed that everyone at the table did too. "How did you know who I was?" I asked. "I didn't. I could tell from your expression that you've been struggling to hide your feelings all night, despite trying not to. Your gaze lingered on her too often. It all clicked when I saw you tampering with her car. Your earlier questions made me wonder what her husband might do if he found out," Carrie explained. "So here I am to find out if my suspicions are correct." "You don't work on oil rigs, do you? Maybe we should talk later." "I used the white Ford Taurus in the corner labeled rental. Batya Street Bar is closed after being trashed this morning," I confessed. "Melody thinks I'm still there. I used tonight to scope out the competition, visiting different bars. Take the keys. I don't want you involved if someone else catches me." "You work at Batya's on Batya? It's got a great reputation," she noted, taking the keys and leaving. Later, I joined her in the car, relieved nobody else was around. "Where to?" Carrie asked. "Somewhere private," I replied. "This is my apartment, plus I needed a ride home," Carrie grinned. It was a 20-minute drive to her modular home outside of town, where I was surprised to see another car in the driveway. "That's my car. Susan, the brunette from our group, gave me a ride. It helps fend off unwanted attention if you say you're with a friend," she explained. I texted her saying I took a cab home. It was a pristine house, barely used. She fetched us beers and we settled in for a chat. "Carrie Ann, thank you for intervening. I was at a loss, I admitted. You made me realize I might have overreacted. He doesn't pay. They have a monthly room at the Ramada Inn on 4th. If you follow them, you'll see them heading there after closing, Carrie Ann divulged. She arrives in jeans and a t-shirt, but leaves in dressier attire, returning a few hours later, still in jeans. How do you know all this? I inquired. My brother manages there. He's on duty Wednesday through Sunday. They've been involved for over a year, Carrie replied. Melody told him you work on oil rigs, gone for months, implying an open relationship. Seeing my shock, she continued, You had no clue at all? No, I didn't. First, I need evidence, I stated. Second, her parents support my bar. I owe them $20,000. I'll speak with my brother, see what he can do. Maybe they have footage or she could get a key card, Carrie suggested. I'll see him next Friday at our parents' anniversary. We swapped contacts before I left. I wanted to witness their reaction to her flat tire, helping confirm Carrie's claims. I returned to the bar just before closing, relieved the parking lot was well lit before they turned off the lights. Minutes later, Melody and Payne emerged, holding hands and exchanging quick kisses. He unlocked her car door, but they noticed the flat tire. Checking, they found them all flat. Though I couldn't hear, their actions suggested a long-term relationship. Payne called for a tow, and within 20 minutes, a truck arrived to inflate the tires. They left for the Ramada Inn, confirming Carrie's tip. Later, Melody, with damp hair and a Macy's bag, returned home. It's painful to realize your spouse has betrayed you. I returned the car, took a cab to retrieve my truck, and arrived home at 5 a.m., crashing on the couch. She remained oblivious to her exposed affair. Mel and I met on a double date, and her captivating eyes drew me in instantly. Despite her father's strictness, she won me over, and I visited her every weekend against my father's wishes, slowly winning him over with persistence. She pursued college while I opted for online business courses while working. By her sophomore year, she was engaged, coinciding with the bar being put up for sale the following summer. Visiting with her father, we discussed renovating the dark, outdated bar. He agreed, lending me money from his retirement fund at a 6% interest rate and assisting in the renovation. Together, we transformed it, significantly cutting labor costs. Over a decade, I reduced the loan from $200,000 to under $20,000, doubling its worth. Melody's parents urged us to start a family, but she hesitated. I realized I wasn't deemed suitable to be a father. Quickly securing a commercial loan, I paid off her father, who, in turn, returned the final payment, having profited from selling the bar's plans. With his confirmation, I cleared the bank loan, leaving only an unsecured overdraft. Repairs and alterations were underway at my bar, yet my wife remained clueless, consumed by her own world. Friday night, disguised again, I tampered with her car's exhaust and his company car's gas tank. Inside their favorite bar, they were oblivious to everything but each other, their behavior drawing attention. Carrie Ann stayed close, offering support. I discreetly bribed the bartender for a video competition, urging discretion. He inquired about my plan. Pulling out my wallet, I whispered, "For your eyes only." After verifying my ID, he grinned, eager to assist in getting back at the cheating woman. He hinted at obtaining Spanish Fly for a special after-hours party next Saturday, aligning perfectly with the bar's reopening on Thursday. Spanish Fly, a potent aphrodisiac, was often prescribed to couples struggling with fertility. That stormy night, feigning sleep, I heard Melody return home at 3 a.m., engaging in a lengthy phone call. The next morning, I rose early and, with her unlocked phone, discovered her conversations with Payne after realizing I was home. She had forgotten to erase her messages. One message caught my attention, addressed to her older sister. "Sis, I need an alibi for last night. I'm going to say I was with you." I discreetly snapped a photo with my cell phone. Later, Melody explained she had visited her siblings. On Tuesday, Carrie Ann Lasher contacted me, suggesting a meetup at the highway truck stop. Arriving, she greeted me with a warm smile, capturing my image for her contacts. Despite my new mustache and goatee, Melody remained oblivious. "Hi, Red," I greeted her, noting her happiness. "I'm Caleb," she corrected. "You'll be happy too once you see the info my brother shared. He asks you to cover his printing costs." We ordered breakfast, me opting for eggs, sausage, and bacon. Carrie choosing a cheese omelet, both with orange juice and coffee. The info revealed Melody had her own keycard to his room for over 6 months, used regularly on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. At 7 p.m., I showed Carrie the incriminating message from my wife. "What's your plan?" Carrie inquired. "Are you considering a divorce? There's a special party next Saturday for Melody and Payne. I hope to receive plenty of video evidence. It's going to be wild. Once I gather everything, I'll show it to her father to explain why she doesn't want my kids. Simultaneously, she'll be served with divorce papers in their hotel room, all caught on tape. When it's ready, email it to me, please." "Why?" Carrie questioned. "Payne's corporate car is totaled, and there's a foul odor coming from Carrie's car. I'd suggest to our company that an upset husband may be to blame." "When should it be sent?" I asked, masking my satisfaction. "It's quite poetic that she's being served at the same time," Carrie chuckled. "May I mention you?" I burst into laughter. "You can be quite an idiot," Carrie joined in. "And yes, you may use my name." "I executed it perfectly," I smirked. "I'll never spill the details." We arranged for medication through our doctor, and I discreetly switched her birth control pills with sugar pills, buying myself time. I had a stroke of bad luck the other night when someone ran a red light on my way to work, totaling my truck and causing a pileup. Rescuers had to use the jaws of life to free me, and I was taken to the hospital for a thorough checkup. Melody and her parents met me there, and after 6 hours of examination, I was released with instructions to rest for at least 2 days and avoid driving for a week. Melody stayed home to care for me, and by Saturday, I was eager to return to the bar. While getting ready, I overheard Melody making plans for a night out. I asked her to drop me off at the bar, pretending to check on the changes I had made. Sales doubled that night thanks to the new cook I had hired, and we were sold out for the evening. We began attracting lunch customers with our daily specials that complemented the bar's theme. The restaurant closed at 8 o'clock, offering pickled eggs or sausages afterward. An elderly gentleman, retired but restless, proposed a partnership, setting up his kitchen and demanding 10% of profits. His scratch-made dishes like shepherd's pie and Irish stew garnered rave reviews, necessitating new kitchen staff. Around 8:30, Carrie Ann Lazar entered with her friend Susan, looking stunning in Irish-themed attire. They sat at a table, enjoying the folk music and Irish standards. Carrie Ann's green ensemble drew attention, and I treated them to specialty drinks, saying, "Compliments of the house." "Hey, Caleb," Carrie Ann said. "Thanks for remembering our preferences. This is my friend Susan." I shook Susan's hand as she excused herself briefly. Opting for a ginger ale, I avoided drinking in my own bar, a promise I'd kept for a decade. Returning to the table, Carrie Ann shifted seats to sit beside me while Susan seemed unfazed. "Taking the seat early," Carrie Ann announced before others arrived. "Susan, Caleb is Melody's ex-husband." "Really?" Susan exclaimed. "Yeah, that's true," I confirmed. "When we first met, I was exploring the town while my bar was under renovation. Carrie caught me doing something I shouldn't have, and after a conversation, I ended up giving her a ride home. We've been friends ever since." "He had no clue about his wife's actions while he was at work," Carrie Ann explained. "That's why we're here today. I wanted to make sure he wasn't alone," she added. "Why choose this place?" Susan questioned. "It's known as a high-class spot." I chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment, though it wasn't my intention when designing it. I just wanted a nice place to bring my girlfriend." "Caleb not only built this bar, he owns it," Carrie mentioned. Carrie and I exchanged a glance at Susan's surprised expression. Soon, the place filled up, and when the team arrived, our table was packed. Carrie Ann and Susan kept me on the dance floor all night, much to the delight of my staff, who noted the unusually crowded dance floor. Surprisingly, everyone agreed the music volume was just right, loud enough to enjoy without overpowering conversation. Closing time came, and I asked Carrie Ann for a ride home, where she shared that most of the crew preferred our bar over others, as it wasn't geared towards the university singles crowd. This pleased me, as word of mouth expanded our clientele. Sunday morning, waking up to find Melody absent didn't surprise me. I spent 2 hours trying to locate her, feigning concern while calling family members, and confiding in Carrie Ann. As I was speaking with her, I received another call, this time from my father-in-law. "Hey, Dad," I greeted. "Still no word, huh?" "No, Caleb. That's why I'm calling. Mary and I decided to brunch at the Ramada Inn on 4th. Wish we hadn't. Melody's car is parked here," he revealed. "I'm stuck without my truck, Dad. Can't make it. You guys enjoy lunch. I'll catch up later," I replied, sounding concerned. My father-in-law was strict, sticking firmly to his beliefs. He saw the world in black and white, finding Anderson Cooper's truth questionable. He was surprised I lacked tattoos, but I valued self-respect. Our society, I argued, prioritized self-interest over community. We debated law and order, one side preaching responsibility, the other endorsing irresponsibility. Racist had become a political weapon, branding dissenters as enemies. I remarked, if Napoleon were alive, he'd applaud their tactics. To them and their followers, we're just a minority, too wise to adhere to their doctrines. Oppose them, and you're labeled a racist, facing molestation and attacks. Now, they infiltrate democratically governed cities, masked, imposing their brand of social justice on us. They only want to hear their beliefs echoed. Though leadership promises investigations and charges, we both know it's unlikely. Equal justice is a bygone ideal. He agreed the situation will worsen before improving. It mirrors Napoleon's rise to power, a history lesson repeating itself. It's disheartening one party reintroduces such a divisive culture. These attitudes once sparked the Civil War, raising fears of a repeat. Dad, I concluded, this is our reality now. Melody's father, if he caught her with a lover, might react violently. I informed him of her secret outings, attaching evidence. Updating Carrie, she laughed, asking what I was up to. And I said, besides smiling, not much. Want me to come get you so we can hang out? She offered. I admitted I'd love to, but felt it's best not to vanish, given their worries. It was around 6 p.m., and as I sat in the kitchen devouring pizza, a car pulled into the driveway. Peering out, I recognized Melody's dad alone. He appeared utterly defeated. Welcoming him inside, I fetched Maker's whiskey and offered him a slice of pizza on a clean plate. Dad, it's serious. After your call, I talked to Mandy first to confirm my suspicions, he explained. I asked the hotel's day manager to contact the night manager early. Turns out, Melody's been having an affair for over 6 months. Mandy found out and agreed to keep it quiet, thinking Melody wanted to enjoy a wild, carefree life before settling down. I feigned shock, but partly I was genuinely surprised by Mandy's honesty. As I was leaving, Melody appeared with her lover, wearing a proud grin like he'd won a prize. I was so shocked I nearly passed out. It took both managers to pull me away, he recounted. I came here because I figured it'd be the last place the cops would search. Dad, I'll call Mom first to let her know you're safe. Then I'll check with the Ramada Inn manager about pressing charges, I assured him. My mother-in-law was devastated but thanked her husband for visiting me. Melody called to apologize, but her mother wasn't having it. Your apology means nothing, she retorted. You've caused enough trouble already. Afterward, I called Jason Lasher to settle a $5 debt. He joked about his sister reminding me. She never forgets, he chuckled. He suggested paying him in front of her to finally put it to rest. Why? I inquired. It'll save us both a lot of trouble, he replied. She needs to learn to let go. I assured him of my intentions, explaining I'm still married and won't make any decisions until then. I promised to be careful, I reassured him. He then informed me that the police hadn't been called and Payne agreed not to press charges, thanks to Melody's persuasion. Thanks, Jason, I said, relieved. I shared the good news with Dad before telling Mom, seeing the relief wash over his face. What's your plan to fix this? He asked, visibly concerned. I took out my phone and drafted a message for Melody. Showing it to her father, it read, Dad just informed me of everything. Congratulations, you've successfully dismantled our family in a single day. Don't return home. The Melody I knew is gone. If you choose him over us, our marriage ends now. Otherwise, it's a slow pass away over the next 6 months. I delivered it earnestly, knowing trust, once broken, can't be restored. Let's end this marriage swiftly and with dignity, he declared, sending the message. Mary always said Melody married her father. This only proved her right. After pizza and drinks, we headed to Lumberland for 3-door deadbolt locks. Soon after installation, the family arrived. Mandy's parents, Jack and Mary, along with their adorable kittens. They left around 10 o'clock. I texted Carrie Ann. Are you awake? She promptly called back. Are you all right? Jason called and filled me in, Carrie inquired. Payne's got 2 black eyes and a broken nose. Your father-in-law gave him a punching before Jason intervened. I chuckled, replying. He used to box amateur when he was younger. I'd love to witness that, I remarked. After the incident, he came here, lost. I learned from your brother that no charges were filed, so I updated the family. They had gathered to discuss the situation and had already left. What about Melody? Carrie inquired. I shared that my father-in-law had posed the same question. I mentioned sending Melody a message and asked him to read it, to which he responded, Let's end this marriage with dignity, and sent it. Your father-in-law spoke for you. Couldn't you forgive her and give her another chance? Carrie questioned. No, to him she's shattered trust beyond repair. He sees things in black and white. She made her choice and she'll have to live with it. Consequences be damned, I asserted. I'm with him, I added. He even helped me change the locks. Any updates on last night? Carrie Ann inquired. Haven't had a chance to check. Been swamped, I chuckled. But I suppose it doesn't matter now. I'll stick to my promise. Give it until Monday night, Carrie assured. From what I've gathered, it might surprise you. Why's that? I asked. Word is the bartender at New City Jack has a history in certain types of videos, Carrie chuckled. If that's true, it wouldn't shock me if he took advantage of the situation. Are you serious? I queried. Absolutely, Caleb, but back to business. When's our official first date? How about on the day Melody gets served? I suggested with a grin. I'll even arrange for her to be served at the office. Remember, you're sending red roses beforehand. I want to drive home the point that she's violated my standards of fidelity. Carrie remarked, Tomorrow at work will be quite intriguing. After ending the call, I reflected on what I knew about Carrie Ann. She was around 24, unmarried and attractive, standing at about 5 feet 8 inches tall. While not extremely slender, she possessed a figure my grandfather would have deemed fit for starting a family. Despite working in the same regional office of the dental company as Melody and her lover, she wasn't part of the management team as far as I knew. She was discerning about who she let into her life, maintaining close ties with her family and inner circle, which included me. Enjoying dancing and drinking, she was sociable like me. However, Carrie, with her cautious nature, left me with more questions than answers. Her level of education seemed higher than her current position suggested, hinting at underlying complexities. As I prepared for bed, I hummed, Hey Carrie Ann, what's the game anyone can play? Anticipating the challenges of Monday, I arranged for my assistant to manage the bar until I resolved my personal matters. Mandy arrived with Jack's truck to assist in packing her sister's belongings. We stopped by a packing supplies store to ensure we did it properly, starting with the master bedroom. While I assembled and sealed boxes, Mandy began sorting through dresser drawers. Caleb, I'm appalled by my sister's actions, Mandy expressed. I never condoned it and stayed silent, hoping Melody would come to her senses. When Dad told me about your message, I broke down and confessed the truth. I've only been aware of it for a month. He took it as his own failure, believing he didn't raise her properly. I think Mom feels the same way. Mandy, I'm still grappling with my emotions. The night Melody texted you, I stumbled upon it accidentally. I was at the bar merely scouting the competition when I took that photo. My intention was to gather evidence for a confrontation. I never anticipated it would unravel like this, and I deeply regret it. Didn't you inform her that the bar had been broken into and was closed? She inquired. I did, but looking back, I realized she heard but chose not to heed. I should have recognized it as her way of signaling the end of our marriage. Melody was always shielded by our father, as was I. Mandy believes I needed to experience parenthood to grasp the sacrifices he made. I strive to instill those values in my children. Melody, even from a young age, lacked a sense of right and wrong. That trait persists, and I can't say I wish I had noticed it sooner. I often think about your parents, I admitted. Few can claim their father-in-law as one of their closest friends. As Mandy reached her sister's carnal garments, she requested sewing scissors, which I promptly supplied before packing Melody's underwear. She cut out the lap and between the cups of the bras, perhaps sending a message to her sister. All the altered items were tossed into a box. I appreciated her gesture, as I couldn't bring myself to do it. It took us roughly 4 hours to complete half of the task. I suggested treating her to lunch before resuming, and she agreed, taking me to a new Chinese restaurant named Yumi's, offering an impressive array of food at a reasonable price. We arrived just as the lunch rush was winding down and encountered Payne on his way out, sporting 2 black eyes, a broken nose, and swollen lips. My father-in-law had certainly made an impact. Mandy, my father did that to him, she exclaimed. It'll take 2 months for it to heal. An eyewitness told me that your dad only hit him 3 times before they intervened. From the looks of Payne, my dad still packs a punch, I remarked, surprising Mandy. If they hadn't stopped him, would Payne be in the hospital? I'm not sure, I replied, stepping out of the car. As we approached the restaurant entrance, Payne emerged and urged Mandy to unblock Melody. Payne, have you met my brother-in-law, Caleb? She asked. I stepped forward, and Payne's face paled as he realized I was the one driving Melody's car. He raised his fist, preparing for a fight. If that's how you want it, Payne, fine. Mandy will confirm you started it, I said. As soon as she agreed, I swiftly kicked him in the groin, then punched him twice. I unleashed a flurry of punches until he collapsed, then delivered a final blow to finish it. Feeling a release, I escorted Mandy inside where we were seated. I ordered unsweetened tea, and she opted for a cola. Before we eat, did my daddy teach you those moves? Mandy inquired. Not exactly, but it's part of my job to handle trouble when needed, I explained. I didn't want a fair fight. I wanted to end it quickly. As Mandy and I filled our plates, my phone rang. It was Melody, but I chose not to answer. I think her boyfriend already gave her a call, I remarked. Too bad he won't be giving her anything soon. Mandy burst into laughter, drawing attention. I vowed not to joke with her in public again. That was hilarious. I almost peed myself, she chuckled. I'm glad you didn't. How would you explain it to Jack? I might have yelled flash flood, I teased. Stop it, she said, laughing once more. After lunch, we resumed packing until 5 o'clock when we unloaded at Jack's storage unit. I paid the deposit and rent, leaving the keys with the owner. I texted Melody to update her. My insurer called with a low offer for my totaled truck, so I requested a replacement with similar mileage. This would cost them more in the long run. Returning home, Carrie and Susan were waiting. I introduced them to Mandy as Melody's colleagues and invited everyone inside. Mandy informed Jack of the situation, and we all relaxed with some beers. We stopped by to check on you, Carrie said, and to see if you'd like to join us for dinner, added Susan. Several people had a rough day at work, she continued. Payne was seriously injured this morning and went to the hospital this afternoon. Melody was apartment hunting during lunch. I can't say I feel sorry for any of them, Mandy replied. We spent the day moving Melody's stuff into storage. Caleb let me pack her underwear, making it easy access for her future lovers. I notified the company via email about Payne and Melody's misconduct, Carrie Ann explained. Attached was a picture of Payne's face after Melody's father caught them. I made it clear that office romances, especially long-term affairs, were unacceptable. Do you hate my sister that much? Asked Mandy. No, I dislike her behavior. I come from a family where we're responsible for our actions, Carrie replied. If we did something good, we were praised. If we did something bad, we faced consequences. I just think they got away with it for too long. I excused myself to take a call from the bar. Later, Carrie filled me in on what I missed. So, Carrie Ann, how long have you been in love with Caleb? Asked Mandy sincerely. The night I met him, he discovered his wife's affair, Carrie recounted. I saw him control his anger until he left the scene. Instead of confronting her publicly, he deflated her tires. He didn't want me involved, showing his consideration. He was prepared to face consequences alone. We talked that night. He didn't curse or humiliate her. He sought evidence to explain gently to his father-in-law why Melody didn't want children. Caleb has always been empathetic, Mandy added. He acts as a peacemaker in family issues, despite his own pain. You have my approval, but if you hurt him, I won't hesitate to act. When your father found out about Melody and Payne, he came here to be with Caleb, Carrie revealed. Did you know he sent the text that ended their marriage? No, I didn't. That explains why they didn't discuss our attempt to reconcile, Mandy responded. Call Jack and the kids to meet us at the bar, I instructed. I'm making dinner for everyone, including Susan and Carrie. Give me a moment to change. Upon returning, I found Mandy gone and Susan in the kitchen. Carrie had cleaned up, and we exchanged appreciative words. I like your sister-in-law, Carrie remarked. I think we'll be good friends. She speaks highly of you too, I replied. As she embraced me, we shared a moment that hinted at what was to come. Walking hand in hand, we headed to the car, sharing smiles with Susan. Carrie took the front seat, and I sat in the back with a sense of anticipation. Susan remarked on our slow progress, Carrie said. We're taking small steps until we sort out this mess. I want to be a stay-at-home mom with a husband who shares my values. Arriving at Baithia's house together, Mandy's children greeted us enthusiastically. Mandy mentioned how well I connect with her daughters, often calming them down. I noted the need for more bar stools. Mandy parked the truck at her husband's store. The shepherd's pie received praise, even from older patrons. Carrie, seated next to me, shared a dessert made by the chef. Carrie tasted my drink, surprised to find it was non-boozelic. She whispered teasingly, and I responded with a promise I made to myself about not drinking before opening the bar. Tears welled in her eyes, and she looked proud. My assistant reported increased sales at the bar and over $1,000 in food sales. I paid my bill with my debit card, emphasizing the importance of honesty to my employees. Not everyone agrees, Carrie said, but if you think about it, it adds up. I left a 20% tip when settling the bill, then Susan and Carrie drove me home. Opening my email, I found a video from a bartender named Jack, showcasing the events of Saturday night. It was titled Surviving University Night and featured Melody and Payne. The video included legally witnessed contracts and was now for sale on an adult site. I texted Carrie the update, noting that Melody would ensure her parents never saw it. Later, Carrie arrived, noticeably transformed. "I'm stunned," I managed to say. "Who are you, and what have you done with my Carrie Ann?" "Do you like it?" Carrie responded. "I've transformed my appearance for good." "Your message allows me to explain. I've been working undercover as an investigator for the FDA within Richards Dental Supply Corporation for over 2 years," Carrie Ann revealed. "They've been selling contaminated materials from China, hiding their sources through multiple companies. Most buyers unknowingly have lead in their dental products. Payne, with a history of stalking married women, poses a threat to Melody." "And then I came along and diverted your attention," I interjected. "Is Susan also an agent?" I asked. "Yes, she is. We met in college while studying accounting," Carrie explained. "Before we proceed, I need you to pass the video and any related information to my FBI contact. The bartender at New City, Jack, is involved in similar activities as Melody and Payne. Your input could help dismantle their operation." We sent it jointly. I poured her a glass of white wine and grabbed a cold beer for myself. As we chatted, her phone rang. She said it was my mom. I offered her privacy, but she declined, so I put it on speakerphone. "Hi, Mom. Looks like you got my message," Carrie said, smiling. "Did you really say you were leaving the FDA?" her mom asked. "Yes, Susan and I will wrap up this week, then start our own firm," Carrie explained. "We'll testify when needed, but plan to stay local for now." "We've been urging you to settle down for years. Why now?" her mom inquired. "Mom, why did you move back home?" Carrie laughed. "Okay, Mom," Carrie said. "I met someone who's piqued my interest enough to consider settling." "Is this the Caleb you've mentioned?" asked Carrie's mother. "Mom, that's enough. Goodbye," Carrie said, ending the call. "Empty nest syndrome, right?" I joked. "Tomorrow, I have a divorce lawyer appointment. Susan and I are leaving Richards," Carrie disclosed. "The FDA is stepping in on Wednesday. They want us out before executing warrants, even though they already know where to look." Carrie left around 1 a.m. Tuesday. I sorted the rental car with the insurance company, then headed to the lawyer's office to start the divorce process. I was the first to arrive at her place that day. She asked for proof, so I recounted the entire story and let her listen to my conversation with my father-in-law. I also provided printouts from the Ramada Inn. "It would strengthen our position if she agrees to my proposed settlement," I explained. "We should arrange a meeting with her and her attorney to show them what's on this flash drive. It depicts what occurred last Saturday night with their consent. I've even forwarded the email confirming it." "What makes you certain she won't contest this?" my feminist lawyer inquired. "Take the flash drive home and watch the 2-hour video alone. I keep the business, she gets the house. No alimony," I suggested. "And if she refuses?" she pressed. "Then every family member will receive a copy anonymously," I stated, rising to leave. "Caleb," she sighed, "can you always be this ruthless?" "Only when someone's actions leave me no alternative," I responded. She made me realize the last 12 years of my life were largely wasted, I reflected. Meanwhile, Carrie and Susan resigned in person from their employer's office. Melody, the office manager, was stunned by their departure. Filling their roles would pose a challenge. Payne, visibly injured, spent the day in his office fielding calls from headquarters. Aware his position was secure due to family ties, he agreed to cover the cost of 2 company cars from his own pocket. It was made clear he must either marry the woman or terminate her employment post-divorce. After quitting my lawyers, I went to a real estate broker I knew. I wanted to find out what office buildings were for sale in the area. One of them, he thought, could be a gold mine if the new owner could find a respectable anchor. It was only 5 blocks to downtown from the Baicha store on Bedia. It was now owned by the bank I was dealing with. He said he thought the bank was getting tired of wearing it with a little facelift, interior painting, and landscaping. The 3-story building could be cleaned up quickly and attract attention. After looking him over, I agreed. We went back to his office and wrote up a proposal with a low price contingent on getting financing and inspection approval. I asked him if I could show the potential client a space that I thought would be perfect for him. He gave me the keys and told me to bring it in tomorrow around 2 p.m. I texted, "Could you and Susan swing by the bar? I need to show you both something," she quickly said. "Sure." I called my father-in-law and asked if he had an hour or 2 to spare. He asked me why. I explained that I was afraid I had to sell the bar to settle the divorce case and needed to start getting ready for a fresh start. I had an office building I was considering, and I wanted his opinion. He agreed, and I picked him up. We walked through the building, checking out the electrical. He pointed out a few things that the building inspector wouldn't notice, but could be used as bargaining chips. He asked what they were asking for. I told him and then disclosed what I was offering. "Smart move," he said. "You can always go up, but you can't go down. Personally, I think you should go for it. You need a couple of new anchors. Do you have someone in mind?" I said. "Just two ladies who were starting their own accounting firm, which is now working with Melody and me since I may be forced to sell Bazia." He grinned, offering, "If you secure it, I'll assist in renovating the space to accommodate both of you. It's more spacious than your current location, with ample parking. Mandy speaks highly of them. She believes they're trustworthy." "Thanks, Dad," I acknowledged. "Do you reckon Melody will stake a claim on your business in the divorce?" he inquired. "The Melody I once knew probably won't, but the one I'm divorcing likely will," I responded. "She'll shift blame onto me to justify her actions." My father-in-law looked taken aback. "But that's not accurate. That's not what you and I know," I asserted. "Name one scenario, aside from a legal contract, where truth would influence a decision." "I can't. And neither can you in divorce proceedings. It all hinges on what the judge believes. If Melody and I had kids, I'd be doomed in any court's eyes," he lamented. "But it's unjust," he insisted. "Dad, we share your sentiment, but we're in the minority. We still cling to notions of right and wrong. Nowadays, most only prioritize themselves. The era when society benefited collectively is long gone," I remarked. "Evidence of that is the growing homelessness in California, the so-called promised land. For most, reality is what the media feeds them on a given day, and it's fleeting," I remarked. Later, at the bar, my realtor informed me that they accepted the offer but wouldn't provide financing, despite my loyalty. I began seeking financing through LendingTree.com, providing my tax returns for the past 5 years to demonstrate my commitment. Susan, Carrie, and I strolled through the vacant ground floor of the building I aimed to purchase, formerly a call center. I outlined my vision for a new bar and restaurant, then inquired about their office space requirements. "We can't afford the finishing costs," Susan admitted. "That's why we're seeking move-in ready options." Determined, I resolved to cover the expenses myself and develop the space as the bar gains traction. "I'll know about financing by Friday. I anticipate acquiring the building below its appraised value," I assured them. "Melody's dad will assist with construction, reducing expenses significantly." "Why go through all this?" Carrie questioned. "The court might compel me to sell Baitya as part of the divorce settlement, so I'm planning ahead," I explained candidly. "Draft your needs for the next 2 years," I instructed. "I'll proceed from there." Susan raised another possibility. "What if you don't need to sell the bar?" "My assistant's promotion and my surgeries necessitate contingency planning," I replied, wincing at Wednesday's pain. Melody, accompanied by her parents and the FDA, made rounds to all regional offices and headquarters. She received a copy of my divorce petition, citing infidelity. By Friday, Melody and Payne departed for Richard's headquarters, finalizing the deal. I managed to secure an additional $250,000 for remodeling. We commenced interior renovation on the ground floor, stripping it down to concrete walls and essentials. Our draftsman crafted detailed plans, incorporating an elevator shaft for 3 floors and additional plumbing for Carrie and Susan's section. Contractors installed 2 entrances, one from the street and another from the main lobby. I had to excavate concrete for a new elevator shaft and erect an interior concrete wall simultaneously. Carrie and Susan flew to Washington every Sunday, returning Friday, assisting as much as possible. Negotiations between my soon-to-be ex's lawyer and mine were futile. Fed up, I arranged a meeting between all parties, prepared for confrontation. After completing the elevator shaft, I sandblasted the building to restore its original color and refresh the red brick. The crew upgraded the flat roof, then turned to interior renovations. Her office featured restrooms, a lunchroom, a reception area, and 6 offices. Mine included public restrooms, a storage area, and a band platform with a dance floor. Contractors completed her section. Within 2 weeks, 2 more office buildings were acquired nearby. 2 were sold and converted into a new Bank of America branch. The local paper heralded neighborhood redevelopment. My meeting with my ex and her lawyer was set for Friday. The kitchen equipment arrived and was set up on the white tile floor. An oak bar counter was constructed and dark pine laminate flooring was laid. Electrical work was completed on both sides. Tables, chairs, and restaurant booths were ordered and scheduled for delivery on Monday. All of this was accomplished in less than 2 months. My real estate agent secured a long-term tenant. a legal team occupying the second and third floors, covering mortgage, taxes, and associated expenses. At a meeting with my attorney, Melody revealed her desire for me to embrace fatherhood. I listened to her claims, skeptically laughing at her assertion of still being on birth control when conception occurred. I proposed a DNA test to validate her claim, then instructed my attorney to reveal the contents of the stick I provided. Melody paled upon learning it had over 2 million hits, each generating $99. As legally married partners at the time, I asserted entitlement to 5% of proceeds from her one-night adventure, a marital asset. I gave her the weekend to propose a fair agreement. Otherwise, I threatened to make the contents of the disc public on Tuesday. The room fell silent. "I know who the father of your child is, Melody, and his name is Payne," I stated firmly before heading for the door. "You made your choice. Face the consequences and accept them." 10 minutes later, my divorce attorney called Caleb with Melody's offer. $350,000 in exchange for keeping his business and house, under the condition of silence about certain matters and relinquishing rights to the movie. "Draw up the settlement agreement," Caleb instructed, "but hold on to the funds until I'm satisfied." "When will the divorce be finalized?" Caleb inquired, eager to move forward. "I'll schedule a court date now, but it won't be legal until 30 days after the judge approves," the attorney explained. Dressed sharply, Caleb awaited Carrie and Susan's arrival at the airport with roses in hand. Red for Carrie, yellow for Susan. Their faces lit up as they saw him, and he greeted them with checks in hand, symbolizing their financial agreements. With luggage in tow, they headed to Caleb's new sedan, purchased with a cash settlement he found acceptable. "Before heading home, I want to show you your finished offices," Caleb informed them. "The rest of the building is rented by a group of lawyers." Carrie inquired about the losses incurred, to which Caleb replied with a laugh, confirming it was indeed significant. In a subsequent meeting with their lawyers, Caleb presented evidence of Melody's earnings from the video, arguing that since it was filmed during their marriage, he was entitled to 50% of the income. Carrie shed tears of relief as I explained our new situation. I would retain my business, my house, and receive an additional $350,000. She had a week to remove any furniture she wanted from the house. "What are your plans for the house?" she asked. "I'll sell it," I replied. "I don't want past memories to hinder our future." Tears of joy streamed down Carrie's face. "Susan, you're still as slow as molasses in January," Susan remarked. "It took you over 2 months to express what I knew the night we met Mandy and her family. But when you finally do, you do it right." Even Susan, typically reserved, became emotional when she saw their newly approved offices. The warm professional space, adorned with oak and pastel colors, impressed them. "All that's left is to name the business, register it, and purchase office equipment and furniture," I said with a smile. "You ladies have a good eye for colors," Carrie said, embracing me. "I love you, finally." I nodded and kissed her, signaling an end to holding back. Later, I accompanied Susan to Carrie's house, where they both now lived. It was Carrie's first time traveling home with me. We spent hours opening up to each other and catching up. After breakfast at our favorite deli, I took her to Gerard's to look at rings. She found one she loved but hesitated at the price. I insisted on buying it, envisioning it as a future gift for our daughter's 16th birthday. Even the salesperson was moved as she processed the sale. The first person Carrie called to share the news was Susan. We agreed to meet at Baisha Restaurant on Batia at 6 o'clock. I suggested she invite her parents, eager for them to meet the man who convinced them to return home. I called Daniel, my former father-in-law, and his wife, whom I always addressed as Mom and Dad, inviting them over. They happily accepted. I shared with them that Melody and I reached a divorce agreement, set for next week. Learning that Melody and Payne had announced their engagement, yet hadn't spoken, I asked Mandy to bring the whole family. I arranged for the chef to prepare a special meal, explaining the occasion. He promised a traditional Irish lamb stew and cedar cookies, adding his own twist. The bartender was instructed to serve Irish coffee with fresh cream, except for me. Unexpectedly, a private table was reserved for us at the back of the restaurant for added privacy. Daniel and Mary, my in-laws, arrived first, allowing me to introduce Carrie to them. The surprise came when Carrie's well-known parents, Bob and Roseanne Lasher, joined us. It seemed Daniel kept them informed while at work. When Jack and Mandy arrived, their young children rushed to me, aged 4 and 3, embracing me tightly. Carrie opened her arms, and the younger ones gravitated toward her. During a lavish dinner, we shared the news that Carrie got her ring, stunning everyone with its size. Carrie explained how it happened and my response, bringing her mother to tears and earning approval from relatives. When Carrie said it was fine for me to call them mom and dad, I assured them they would always be mom and dad to me. The exceptional food delighted us as always. When the bill came, Carrie's father insisted on covering it. Despite wanting to protest, a nudge from Carrie stopped me. After everyone left except her parents, we recounted our story in detail. Bob asked why I never drank Irish coffee. Carrie explained my policy of abstaining from booze in my own establishments to set an example for employees. Impressed, Bob joked that our restaurant was fit for his daughter and friend, then praised the office design and my principles. Daniel regarded me as the son he never had, seeing me as someone who stands firm in his values. Off the record, Daniel is the father figure I never had. Growing up in a poor household without a father, my mother raised me and my sister alone after he left before they were even married. Meeting Daniel through Melody, I found him to be tough, street smart, and unyielding, yet always principled. He taught me invaluable lessons about strength and integrity, shaping who I am today. Daniel is my father not by blood, but by choice, and I owe much of my moral compass to him. We stood in silence until the ladies returned, and then Carrie's father spoke. Expressing approval of our relationship, he welcomed me into their family, a gesture that left Carrie in shock as he had never before approved of anyone. We spent the night together, and it was hard to see her leave. Susan and Carrie aimed to leave the FDA on good terms. I listed the house on Monday, signed the divorce agreement Wednesday, and received the trust funds. Friday, I watched the judge finalize the divorce. Melody didn't show. I picked up my assistant and showed him the new bar layout. He agreed to manage it for $75,000 a year, plus a 10% bonus based on net income. Charlie's Bar and Grill was born. 3 years later, Corbett and Sullivan accounting firm thrived while Charlie's Bar and Grill became a local favorite. Meanwhile, Melody and Payne's marriage crumbled in court as she caught him with her best friend. Despite this, her family remained distant. The birth of our twins brought joy amid life's challenges. Carrie playfully named me during labor pains, and we proudly introduced our red-haired babies to our relatives.
Lately, I've become quite popular in the neighborhood, especially among the grandmothers. After graduating from college, I was at a loss without a job, pacing anxiously about my future. One day, my uncle, who lived nearby, told me he was providing services for seniors in the area and suggested I come and learn the ropes. I started helping out with office work at his center. My uncle encouraged me to get certified, saying there was a written exam, but it was manageable and having a national certification could come in handy later in life. So I began studying for the certification. I enjoyed learning new things during the lectures and passed the exam on my first try. The practical training was tough, but I persevered, seeing it as a passing phase. I was working at my uncle's center when suddenly I was called to assist an elderly person at their home. The senior needed immediate care, and there were no caregivers readily available, so I was sent. My assignment was at the home of a senior suffering from spinal stenosis named Emily. There was food prepared by her daughter, so I only needed to help with simple meals, daily walks, and personal hygiene assistance. I had experience managing a household from my college days living alone, so I didn't find it difficult to provide these services. Emily was very dignified and had a youthful demeanor, and her daughter, who lived with her, appreciated the help a young person provided. Going from office work to hands-on service felt rewarding and gave me a sense of purpose. I provided service at Emily's house from 9 in the morning to noon, 3 hours daily. One day, Emily was suffering from constipation, a painful condition for her. I quickly donned sanitary gloves and assisted her with her issue. Although she was embarrassed to receive such help from a young man, I reassured her and handled the situation with care. It wasn't easy, but I remembered reading about such scenarios during my training. Although it seemed challenging to help someone who wasn't family, I learned that this was quite common. Understanding how dangerous constipation could be for seniors and seeing Emily's relief and smile made me feel fulfilled in my work. Because of my service to Emily, I was referred to another neighbor, Sophia, who also needed caregiving. Sophia requested my services for the afternoon. Emily had praised me so much that she insisted no one else was needed, and she wouldn't consider anyone else for the job. She asked specifically for me, so I informed my uncle that we had a new client at our center. All thanks to Emily's high regard, which led to another grandmother seeking our services. He was thrilled with the news. I had heard that Emily takes a bath once a week, assisted by her daughter. But one day, her daughter had an unexpectedly busy schedule and couldn't help Emily with her bath. She apologized to me and asked if I could make sure Emily didn't slip while bathing. I agreed and waited outside the bathroom door for Emily to finish her bath. To my surprise, Emily asked me to help scrub her back. It felt a bit unusual helping someone of my grandmother's age with such a personal task, but I did it. Emily was overjoyed, saying it had been a long time since she had enjoyed a shower so much. I even helped her dry her hair with a dryer. Watching her slowly dress herself, maintaining her independence, was heartwarming. My role was to support her in what she could do, so I simply observed and ensured her safety. After her bath, Emily slept contentedly, and I tidied up her room. Unexpectedly, Emily woke up and asked me to lie down beside her. I politely declined, but she insisted, not wanting her offer to be ignored. Lying beside her, I listened to stories of her life. Emily, once vibrant and active, now found it difficult to leave her house and felt deeply saddened by this. I comforted her, and she expressed how much she appreciated a fine young man visiting her home daily, saying these were her happiest days. I sensed her loneliness, and we awkwardly shared a moment. The next day, Emily couldn't look me in the eye, and I felt the same, but I understood her feelings and her silent request for companionship. After performing my contracted services, Emily and I spent quality time together, promising to keep our shared moments confidential. In the afternoon, I visited Sophia, who enjoyed storytelling. Although she could manage household chores, her pace was noticeably slower. Sophia loved reminiscing about the past, and I emphasized the importance of fine motor exercises for her well-being. She mentioned her sister lived in the countryside and often sent various farm products by mail. Taking advantage of this, I engaged Sophia in activities like sorting beans and peeling garlic while we chatted. She was grateful for the company and the help, especially since she struggled with severe incontinence. One day, after running out of adult diapers, she had an accident in her cotton panties. Embarrassed, she hurried to the bathroom to clean up, but soon after, I heard a loud thump. Sophia had fallen in the bathroom. I rushed in to find her embarrassed and on the floor. I quickly helped clean and escort her back to bed. As she recounted her past, she broke down in tears, mourning the loss of her once athletic prowess. I consoled Sophia, and she eventually fell asleep. When it was time for me to leave, she pleaded to keep what happened a secret, and I assured her that I remembered nothing. Days later, through Sophia's referral, I met another senior in her late 60s named Olivia, who, despite being mobile, had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Here's the continuation of your story translated into American English with cultural nuances considered and English names retained. After finishing my afternoon service, I headed to Olivia's house. Olivia insisted on having me and nobody else, so I began visiting her after my other appointments. With her condition, she often repeated herself. I spent time with her doing puzzles and folding paper crafts. One day, she even called me her grandchild and gave me a crumpled dollar bill from her purse to buy candy. Another day, she mistook me for her husband, saying she was shy but ready to consummate their marriage. I was deeply moved by her sincere belief and hugged her tightly. Olivia got ready with such earnestness, preserving her dignity as much as possible. I helped her get dressed as she insisted she had things to do with her husband. The experience with Olivia was surprising despite her age. She was quite spry, reminding me that age is indeed just a number. I provide this service daily to 3 grandmothers. Sometimes, after calming Olivia, who playfully suggests having a baby, and calls me her husband, she lightly snores away in sleep. The next day, she greets me as teacher. The grandmothers always keep their promises to me. I feel a sense of responsibility knowing these women, who've been through tough times and lost their spouses, now rely on me. One day, after providing service at Emily's home, she asked me to wait a moment before leaving. She shyly offered me a tomato saved, especially for me, a gift from her daughter. I tried to decline, suggesting she keep it, but she insisted that I take it to share with my parents. Sophia expressed her gratitude for handling even the disposal of her adult diapers by giving me some of her farm produce. Olivia, referring to me affectionately as her husband, gave me a pair of long, warm socks to keep me cozy. However, I couldn't just be on the receiving end. I bought the lovely lady some snacks and pretty sleep socks. You might wonder how a young man can do this job, but I like to think of them as my grandmothers, and that makes all the difference. Hello? I'm in my late 30s. I've always had girlfriends, but never felt confident enough to get married. So I've been living single. I majored in Chinese and lived in China for over 5 years. At the request of an acquaintance last summer, I started tutoring a first grader named Oliver in Chinese. Oliver, having graduated from an English kindergarten, speaks English well, but was also eager to learn Chinese. So I was introduced by a mutual friend to tutor him. I happily agreed to also help him prepare for Chinese proficiency exams. Oliver's family home was quite spacious and well organized. When I first met Oliver's mother, I was struck by her beauty. She looked like she was in her mid-20s, though she said she was in her early 30s, having married right after college. She was slim and tall, easily over 5'7". Oliver, taking after his mother, was a handsome boy with distinct features. He was a bright child, understanding more than what was taught, doing his homework well and having good pronunciation. He has a 3-year-old sister who was incredibly cute. I heard Oliver's grandmother lived in the same apartment complex and would often come over to look after her grandchildren. I had the chance to meet her during my first lesson. Oliver's mother mentioned she needed to go to a community center for her daughter's class, so she asked her mother to stay with Oliver during our Chinese lessons. Oliver's grandmother, also quite beautiful, seemed to have passed down her looks. She mentioned she was preparing to become a senior model and needed to practice for interviews in English and Chinese. After Oliver's lesson, she expressed a desire to have private lessons at her place on a different day, since she needed to look after her granddaughter. I informed her of my availability, and we agreed on weekly lessons every Friday afternoon at her home. Despite offering a family discount, she insisted on paying the full price, mentioning she heard her grandson was enjoying the lessons and learning well. She humbly asked for patience as she might learn slower due to her age. I learned she was in her mid-50s, but she was very motivated and had surprisingly good pronunciation, and it was lovely to see her practice consistently. She mentioned she had a lot to do besides foreign language interviews. For starters, she takes care of her appearance and gets treatments at a local skincare clinic. She also makes it a point to shower at home and apply a facial mask every day. She offered to help me with a mask after class when we had a moment, and I agreed. You just have to sit in a chair and apply it, but lying down on the couch and relaxing for 20 minutes works too, she said. Having only ever used lotion my whole life, that day was my first time trying a face mask. I didn't like the cold feeling of the mask sheet on my face, but after washing it off, my skin tone seemed noticeably brighter. Having a job that requires a lot of talking, my throat often feels scratchy, and I need to present a clean appearance to my students. Realizing I hadn't been taking care of my skin made me think I should start. None of my past girlfriends ever paid attention to my skin, but I found Oliver's grandmother to be quite thoughtful. One day after class, she showed me a home workout channel on YouTube. The exercises looked easy to follow at a glance. "Would you like to try it?" she asked. So we turned on the smart TV in the living room and started exercising. It looked easy, but I was sweating profusely after a while. As I was fanning myself, she said, "I'm sweating too, so I'm going to take a quick shower. You should take one too," and went to the bedroom. I never imagined what would happen next when we exercised. I noticed her body didn't have an ounce of fat. Impressive for someone in her 50s. The bathroom had a pleasantly scented soap, not some cheap supermarket brand, but a pretty natural soap. After lightly washing up and changing clothes, she came out in a cute home dress. Honestly, I was a bit smitten. It was my first time feeling this way about an older woman. Thanks to Oliver's grandmother, I got to do a face mask and exercise. It was so much fun, I said as I was leaving. She looked at me and said, "If you have time, let's have a beer." I was planning to have a beer at home anyway, so it worked out well, and I sat down on the couch. She brought out homemade sweet potato chips and stout. I've been having so much fun preparing to be a senior model. I've always exercised and taken care of my skin, but studying with you has been such a joy, she said. Her mood turned somber as she recalled her late husband. She mentioned that Oliver's mom passed away from a terrible illness within 2 months of getting sick while she was in college. The thought of living without her husband was daunting, but she smiled and said that those who are left behind must go on living. She moved closer to her daughter to alleviate her loneliness by spending time with her grandchildren. She also mentioned that becoming a senior model was her son-in-law's suggestion, noting that she hadn't seen anyone her age with such good skin and youthful appearance. I cautiously asked if she still felt lonely without her husband. She admitted that while being busy with her grandchildren keeps her mind off her late husband, she feels truly alone when she returns home. She expressed skepticism about the men others have tried to introduce to her, wishing for someone cultured like me. Our connection was undeniable, and by the next morning, I had come to my senses. Unable to wait for our next lesson, I found myself at her house late at night. I'm unsure if it's appropriate to continue this relationship with my student. She's been widowed for over 10 years and hinted at the difficulty of those years, making it hard for me to leave her alone.
Forecasting late spring weather in Pennsylvania is often difficult. This April, we saw unusual levels of rain and warmth. Normally, I'd wait until early to mid-May to cut the grass for the first time, but not this year. Although I had to start yard work early, I'm thankful it's not snowing. Last year, at this time, we had a snowstorm that left 15 centimeters of snow, so I prefer the early mowing to dealing with snow any day. Also, with tax season over, it's nice to enjoy the sunshine outside. My home has a unique feature, a sharp drop in the backyard that leads to a small creek and woods. During building, they added fill to make the front of the house level with the street, creating a steep drop partway up the side. As a result, the basement, completely enclosed at the front, opens at the back. This design let me install a double door for services, ideal for storing my lawnmower and other garden tools without filling up the garage. It's one of the parts of the house I like most. After finishing the yard work and storing everything, I quickly went upstairs to take a shower. Allergies to grass make me eager to clean up. Climbing the stairs, I heard my wife's voice from the front of the house, where I had been mowing. Seeing her friend's car, I expected to hear voices, but their conversation made me stop with my hand on the door handle. "Let me introduce myself. I'm Robert Crane, but I go by Bob. In school, they called me Hogan, after Robert Crane, the actor in Hogan's Heroes. While I was okay with the nickname, the show was before my time, so it's not really a current reference. With a degree in accounting from the University of Pennsylvania, I quickly got my CPA and now lead audit teams at a well-known firm in Philadelphia. It's not the most exciting job, but it pays well and gives me insight into various businesses. My skill in forensic analytics, finding financial trails to expose fraud and money laundering, has made me a recognized expert. I've even worked with the FBI on 2 cases. My wife, Kelly, studied political science and business with plans to go to law school when we first met in our freshman year. I was sitting, waiting for class to start when she walked in. Kelly was tall and slim, like a ballerina but with a fuller chest. Her long strawberry blonde hair fell over her bare shoulders, a truly eye-catching sight. She wore a pretty sundress with sandals that showed off her beautiful legs, smooth and soft. Her mix of innocence and charm was very strong, instantly attracting me. Unfortunately, Kelly didn't sit next to me, nor was she in my group project. It took me 4 weeks to gather the courage to talk to her and start a conversation with a silly joke, which made her laugh loudly. We talked more, and I finally asked her to have coffee after class. "I've been waiting for you to ask that for 4 weeks, she answered with a smile. During our last 2 years of college, we were always together. Initially, our parents had doubts about us, but they accepted our relationship after seeing our strong commitment. I couldn't imagine things getting better, but they did. After graduation, I got a job at a well-known accounting firm in Philadelphia with a great salary for a 22-year-old just out of college. Kelly got into the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and we stayed in our college apartment. I also started my MBA, funded by my employer, and commuted to work on SEPTA, which saved us from needing a car and cut costs. 3 years later, Kelly finished law school, and I proposed at a birthday dinner at Morton's Steakhouse in Rittenhouse Square. We got married 6 months after that. Kelly began working as a deputy district attorney in Bucks County, north of Philadelphia. We bought a house in Doylestown, the county seat with a courthouse and good train access, which made our commutes long but better than dealing with traffic on the Schuylkill Expressway or I-95. With her mom's help, Kelly found a good starter home with 3 bedrooms, one for an office with 2 desks, a guest room, and our main bedroom. Being close to her parents' house also made the location attractive, as Kelly saw it as a possible nanny solution when we started a family. As an only child who always wanted siblings, I was excited about this new phase. We had talked about having kids since our freshman year and agreed to wait until Kelly was settled in her career. But finally, the time came, and 2 nights ago, we decided to stop Kelly's birth control to start trying for a baby. I was overjoyed. Then, I heard something that made me stop, my hand on the door handle. "Hogan and I decided it was time for me to get pregnant," Kelly happily told her friend Olivia Watkins. Their loud, excited screams reminded me of the sad sight of whales accidentally beaching themselves on the Jersey shore in their eager rush. Standing on the stairs, I smiled at their excitement, which matched my own as I looked forward to being a dad. As I went to grab the pen again, a comment broke my happiness. "This is wonderful, Kel," Olivia remarked. "But what about Paul? The situation downstairs?" "Hush," Kelly quickly replied. "Hogan is outside mowing the lawn." After a short pause, I imagined her looking around, expecting me to be nearby. Then she added, "I've already told Paul that I'm ending the affair. He understands. With Grossman retiring as senator, Paul sees a chance for himself. Being caught in an affair with a married staffer wouldn't look good. It's really that straightforward." 3 sentences shattered my world. Paul Evans, Kelly's boss at the DA's office, was a 40-year-old widower with a daughter named Barbara. His wife Anne had died of breast cancer, making him a single dad. Paul was deeply involved in politics, and Kelly often shared stories about his political tactics to climb higher. So you're just quitting like that? You've been involved for 6 months and now you're just stopping? Olivia's doubtful tone angered me. She was a former classmate from Penn State, someone I knew before Kelly. Despite Kelly and Olivia's close friendship, I thought Olivia was still my friend. It seems I was wrong. Stop it, Kelly laughed, brushing off Olivia's teasing. You're terrible. Paul was intense, but he was too much for me. I love Hogan, and I want to stay true and committed as we start our family. How many more stereotypes are we going to joke about? I had a thought. All I need for complete happiness is to come home, see an unknown car in the driveway, and find them together in my bed. I wanted to storm into the room, yelling, destroying everything. But I was stuck, shocked, my heart pounding in my ears. Quitting just like that? Olivia asked, leading to another laugh from Kelly. Not exactly, she admitted. I have a conference with Paul in Pittsburgh next week. That will be our goodbye. I'll miss the closeness, but Hogan and the baby are my priorities. I couldn't take it anymore, but I didn't know what to do. I care a lot about Kelly, yet this was tearing me apart. My business mind kicked in. I needed to step back and think strategically. As I walked up the stairs, I considered my options. I opened the door and walked into the kitchen. Kelly and Olivia were there drinking tea. Was that guilt on Kelly's face? Honey, are you okay? She asked, her voice full of concern. It was then I noticed tears on my face. Allergies, I said quietly. Looks like it's going to be a tough spring. Let's go up and clean up. Just leave those clothes by the bathroom. I'll handle them right away so they don't crowd your closet. Remember, I bought you a new pack of Claritin D last week. It's in the medicine cabinet. Thanks, I managed to say, heading to the stairs. I needed some space to think. The next morning, Monday came, and I left for an early meeting before Kelly woke up, using it as an excuse to avoid her. Last night, I said I went to bed early because of allergies, hiding my real feelings. Sitting in the car, I thought about what I had learned. On one hand, my wife had cheated, but it seemed over on just a physical level. Some might say I should be okay with this, happy that she plans to be a devoted wife and mom now. However, I keep wondering if she'll cheat again. Could there be more hidden meetings leading to a divorce where Kelly gets the kids and I end up with the financial stress? As an accountant and business analyst, I'm used to weighing risks and benefits, and I see this situation in the same way. My trust in Kelly is broken. To dismiss her actions as just physical misses the main point. She showed no respect for me as her partner. A cheater knows they are hurting their spouse. Otherwise, they would be honest from the beginning. While I might never get over her affair with Paul, if she had told me herself, it would have at least shown some respect. Kelly's behavior showed how little she values me. Though I was at work physically, my mind was busy figuring out what to do next. Besides overhearing that talk, I had no proof, nor had I noticed any different behavior over the past 6 months when she was supposedly cheating. Confronting her without evidence could be pointless and wouldn't help much. Kelly would deny everything. Paul Evans would deny everything. Taking any legal steps would be financially ruinous, as every judge, politician, and lawyer nearby knew Evans. I would have faced huge challenges in clearing my name. The idea of moving and starting over came to mind, but our house was a problem, making it hard to leave. Kelly couldn't pay for it alone with her salary, and we didn't have much equity. Trying to sell the house quickly to prevent foreclosure seemed unlikely given the current market. Such a step would hurt our credit scores, which is especially bad for a CPA looking for a job. It's tough to be trusted with other people's money when you can't handle your own. I needed solid proof before making any moves. I believed I could gather evidence, but it unexpectedly came from an unlikely source. 3 days later, despite my efforts, I found no supporting evidence. Kelly's personal laptop yielded nothing, and no incriminating items were found hidden away. Then Kelly called, inviting us to a political announcement party at Paul Evans's house on Friday night. I assumed it would be his Senate candidacy announcement, yet I still lacked proof. Frustrated, we arrived at Evans's lavish mansion near Washington Crossing, complete with a backyard horse farm and a large tent for guests. As we entered, there stood Paul Evans, arrogantly greeting guests as if he were royalty. As a widower, Evans lacked a wife to fulfill hostess duties, so he clearly enlisted his 21-year-old daughter for the role. She stood beside him, greeting guests as if it were second nature. When our turn came, Evans beamed at Kelly, saying, "Kelly, you've done it. How wonderful." He gave my wife a chaste kiss on the cheek before turning to me. "Robert, good to see you again. I'd be lost without your wife. but it seems I'll have to give her up soon when you start expanding your family." He chuckled at his own jest. "Just give her back when you're done and no hard feelings." More laughter ensued. Kelly blushed slightly, and I wanted to throttle the grinning fool. I caught his hint, which he seemed to think flew over my head. "Who knows what the future holds?" I replied, tone flat and neutral, neither hostile nor friendly, mirroring how I delivered the audit results. Evans flushed a bit, and Kelly nudged me, murmuring something about being impolite. Smoothly moving on to the next guest, Evans left us alone with his daughter. Kelly was undeniably beautiful, but Barbara Evans was breathtaking. Even in my simmering anger, I couldn't help but notice. Her auburn hair and radiant smile evoked thoughts of a young Maureen O'Hara. If Kelly resembled a voluptuous ballerina, Barbara looked like she belonged on a swimsuit calendar alongside Kate Upton. She possessed the kind of beauty, physique, hair, and skin that photographers dreamed of and often had to enhance with Photoshop. Paul Evans had the quintessential political family, a triple threat. He appeared tailor-made for the roles of wise statesman and family man. Losing his wife to cancer provided him with the perfect spouse, idolized by all, with any detractor risking career destruction. Barbara was a princess, former prom queen, business and law student at Penn State, former gymnast, and now a cheerleader for the university. According to Kelly, Barbara planned to audition for the Eagles cheerleading squad at the next open competition, having just turned 21 with a saintly late mother and a smart, beautiful, photogenic daughter. The press would eat it up on the campaign trail. "Robert!" Barbara exclaimed in an excited tone, embracing me tightly. This wasn't a mere polite hug, it was a full-bodied squeeze, with parts of her pressed against me in the most delightful manner. "You look fantastic. No wonder Kelly's been keeping you all to herself. You never show up to any of our gatherings. You shouldn't overwork yourself. It's not good for your health." Somehow, she managed to say it all in one breath. In less than a second, my fury gave way to utter astonishment. I offered a few polite compliments about her appearance and was about to depart when two realizations struck me. Firstly, Barbara never greeted Kelly. Secondly, what parties was she referring to? Before I could inquire, Kelly swooped in with her own greeting for Barbara, and we had no choice but to yield to the next guests in line. As Kelly and I found a spot to relax, I pondered what Barbara might know. After fixing my wife a drink, I inquired, "What parties was Barbara mentioning?" Kelly simply smiled and waved it off. "She's just teasing, that little brat. Sometimes Paul holds team meetings and strategy sessions here. He claims he thinks better with a drink in hand, and you never know who might be nearby at a bar. Barbara was home a few times when we gathered here. Don't spread it around, but Paul let her have a drink at home before she turned 21. That set my mind racing. This scoundrel might have had carnal relations with my wife right here in his home under the pretext of business meetings. These could even pass as actual meetings where Kelly was the last to leave. Or perhaps she left first and returned after everyone else had departed, preventing suspicion from arising about why she always lingered behind to help her boss tidy up. With his wife deceased and his daughter off at college, he had no need for a discreet hotel room, hence leaving no trace of their encounters. "So, Barbara attends your team meetings?" I inquired. Kelly brushed off the query. "No, she was home on a few occasions when her classes were canceled. She's just poking fun at her dad for partying during work hours." She tugged at my hand. "Come on, honey, let's get your young wife a drink." For the next hour, Kelly stuck close to my side. We conversed with some of her colleagues, and a few brought up our plans to start a family, expressing both sadness at potentially losing Kelly for a while and joy for our future. Frankly, I felt a tad embarrassed. How did all these people know about our plans? An hour later, Paul Evans called for everyone's attention, his daughter beaming beside him. He began by thanking everyone for coming, then proceeded to announce his major campaign. Though anticipated, the news stirred excitement among the attendees. I observed the local newspaper publisher alongside one of his reporters, undoubtedly jotting down notes for tomorrow's headline. I'll spare you the other party particulars. It would have been enjoyable if my heart wasn't in pieces and my mind racing to find proof. About 90 minutes after the grand announcement, Margaret Williamson, the first assistant district attorney, entered, announcing Paul's desire to meet with his staff. While Paul held an elected position, Margaret served as the office's senior manager, essentially overseeing its operations. While prosecutors rotated every 4 years, Margaret remained a constant presence, revered for her integrity in the legal community. Kelly had taken the job primarily because of her. I held great respect for her. She had been married for over 3 decades to an electrician who had supported her through college and now owned a successful electrical contracting company. The couple was deeply committed to each other, serving as role models for Kelly and me. "Sorry for stealing your wife, Hogan," Margaret quipped. "Paul wants to discuss office organization once he wraps up campaigning." With that, they departed. Leaving the gathering of remaining spouses, I sought solace on the far side of the expansive pool opposite the patio where the party buzzed. A wicker swing chair hung from chains in the shadow, providing a secluded spot for contemplation. Barely 5 minutes in, my solitude was interrupted by a voice. "So this is where you're hiding," Barbara purred as she slid into the swing beside me. She positioned herself to face me, her little black dress clinging to her tan hips, suggesting allure while maintaining an air of innocence. It's telling of my state of mind that I noted this observation almost clinically. "You seem burdened," she remarked. I hesitated to discuss this with my wife's lover's daughter, no matter how attractive she was. "We've been swamped with office work, lots of audits," I offered, hoping to steer the conversation elsewhere. "Is it true?" Barbara inquired with genuine interest. "I just wrapped up my final accounting course at university. We covered forensic accounting and law enforcement. I found it fascinating," I shared, even surprising myself amidst the grief. "Really?" I questioned incredulously. "It may not sound glamorous, but essentially it's like being a detective, piecing together information from various sources to uncover the truth, especially when people try to hide it. Not everyone sees it that way," I admitted. Barbara delved into the details of what she had learned in class and why she found it captivating. I must admit, I was impressed. I've encountered interns at firms who couldn't articulate themselves as well on the subject. Focusing on her words helped me push aside her appearance and, more importantly, the simmering anger within me. I found myself embracing the role of mentor, which helped dim the emotional turmoil. "You really enjoyed the course," I observed. "You seem to have a solid grasp of the topic." Barbara blushed momentarily at the compliment. The sultry pinup persona faded, revealing a genuinely touched young woman. "I actually considered joining the FBI, but after school, Dad wants me to either pursue prosecution or join one of his friends' law firms. I'm not sure if that's what I want," she confided. "You should pursue your own aspirations, not your father's," I advised honestly, though I wasn't opposed to disrupting that idiot's plans. "I've had some experience with the FBI when audits uncovered criminal activity. They're sharp individuals," I added before Barbara could respond. Suddenly, Kelly emerged from the shadows. "So this is where you've been? No funny business?" she teased. Barbara turned to my wife with a bright smile. "We were just discussing Bob's work. It came up in our class discussion," she explained. "Well, that's Hogan for you," Kelly remarked proudly. "I remember one audit report where an employee embezzled using their boss's login. Hogan discovered that some transfers occurred while the guy was on a business trip. But the login originated from the corporate office. Most people would have stopped once the boss was implicated. Hogan kept digging. I could have nailed the employee on my first day as a lawyer. Hogan left the prosecutors with nothing to do on the case," Kelly recounted, beaming at me. This left me utterly bewildered. How could she be proud of me and profess her love while carrying on a 6-month affair with her damn boss? Seeing my expression, Kelly asked, "What's wrong, dear?" "Nothing," I replied. "Just pondering." "Well, stop it. It's a party," Kelly scolded. She barely paused before adding, "Hogan, you'll never guess what opportunity I've been offered. Paul and Margaret want me to handle some administrative tasks as I prepare for maternity leave once your project is completed. This way, there won't be any loose ends when I'm gone. I'll be working directly under Margaret." My heart skipped a beat at the thought of Kelly being away from that idiot Paul. But in the next moment, my hopes were dashed. "I'll have to travel occasionally," Kelly continued. "I'll be delivering important documents to Paul during the campaign, so I won't be actively involved. But I'll get to witness some behind-the-scenes action. It's going to be so exciting." Once again, my heart shattered. While Kelly had mentioned ending the affair to start a family, I couldn't shake the fear of her straying again, especially with the allure of the campaign trail. If she becomes pregnant, who's to say it'll be my child? Paul is roughly my size and complexion. Without a DNA test, it'd be challenging to ascertain. My anger began to stir, but I quelled it. Now wasn't the time. Barbara engaged Kelly in conversation about her new role in the campaign, leaving me sidelined. I seized the chance to compose myself. After tonight, I'll start strategizing. I needed to somehow counteract Paul's political sway, though frankly I had no clue how to do it. 2 days later, the solution arrived at my office. Your 4 o'clock meeting is here, my administrator announced. Checking my calendar, I found no bookings. Before I could respond, Barbara entered. "Hey, Hogan," she greeted, her long auburn hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore a light sundress that accentuated her legs, with strappy sandals reaching almost to her knees. Her bosom were discreetly covered, yet the fabric hinted at allure. 2 thin straps upheld the dress, leaving her arms bare. I was speechless as she entered. "I hope you don't mind," Barbara began, shutting the door behind her. "I told Mary we had a meeting to discuss my career and Kelly's employment with my father." Politely, I rose from my chair. "Glad to see you. Just working on some reports," I said, gesturing for her to take a seat. After she sat, I followed suit. "What's on your mind?" The cheerful expression vanished from Barbara's face. "I think you know, Bob. I saw it when you talked to my father. I'm truly sorry he's tarnishing such a good guy." I was shocked. This wasn't what I anticipated. "What do you mean?" I inquired cautiously. Barbara disclosed the news about my father's affair with my wife in a blunt manner. I leaned back in my chair at the stark revelation. "Did you recently find out?" Barbara asked softly. I nodded. "I'm truly sorry." "How? When did you learn?" I questioned. "About 3 months ago," Barbara confessed. "I'm not sure when it began, but I discovered it on February 1st. I came home early that Friday and stumbled upon one of their rendezvous at our house. I had been out for lunch with a friend from school and stopped by to drop off some items and say hello. Dad inquired when I'd be back, and I said after dinner. It turned out my friend fell ill and couldn't join me. After having a snack, I returned home, where I witnessed Dad and Kelly engaging in carnal activity in our jacuzzi. I captured photos and even filmed them running undressed into the house. There was a foot of snow on the ground. "Did you take pictures of your father having physical engaging?" I asked in shock. I also pondered whether I could obtain copies of the photos, which would be extremely useful in a divorce. As if anticipating my thoughts, Barbara reached into her bag, retrieved a large envelope, and placed it on my desk. "Here are pictures from that day and several others," she said. Pausing, she grinned. "Dad installed a security system in the house. The entire exterior and several interior rooms are monitored. If you know the website and have the key fob and password, you can access it from almost anywhere. There's also a flash drive with video recordings." I was taken aback by this. Paul's daughter provided me with everything necessary to divorce and discredit her father. "Why?" I asked. The sorrowful expression on Barbara's face turned to anger as she quietly replied, "I despise him more than you ever could." I remained silent, waiting for her to speak. After a moment, she began, "Dad met Mom when she was a college student. He was an aspiring lawyer assigned to the Physical Engaging Crimes Unit in Philadelphia. Mom came to study from Ireland. Her family was wealthy but perished in the London dairy bombing. She came here to escape the chaos." Her voice softened, likely inherited from her mother. "Mom was dating some loser who slapped her so hard she ended up in intensive care." Kelly paused and placed a thick book adorned with greenery and lace on my table. "I found her diary after she passed, and she was somewhat of a submissive lover. She enjoyed being commanded by a strong man. This idiot went too far and she ended up in the hospital. My father was tasked with handling the situation. They met, he went to jail, and a year later they married. My father was always ambitious. He landed a smart, beautiful woman with an exotic accent. Mom found a protector in him. I came along a few years later. Dad wanted me to pursue gymnastics. He thought having a daughter compete in the Olympics would boost his political career. Do you know how most gymnasts' careers end?" I shook my head, admitting, I never considered it. Barbara grinned. "They call it the 3 Bs, bosom, backsides, and boys. I got the first one. I was pushed into cheerleading to embody the all-American girl. I didn't mind. I enjoyed performing. But by age 16, I realized I was merely a pawn in my father's ambitions. Mom knew from the start. Dad had affairs almost immediately after they wed. Mom knew and pleaded with him to stop, but she was too powerless to act. She felt trapped. Being a devout Catholic, divorce was out of the question." Barbara paused, and I allowed her a moment to gather her thoughts. After a beat, she continued, "Sometimes I wonder if her poor response to cancer treatment stemmed from a subconscious desire to die or active sabotage of her treatment. Anyway, I was by her side in the hospital when she passed. Officially, Dad went to court and won a liquidation case. He coerced the doctor into altering the time of end of life. In reality, he celebrated by having physical engaging with his assistant in her apartment. He paraded Mom as a trophy. and the press adored the story of their meeting, a heroic prosecutor rescuing a misused woman. Damn! That idiot himself misused her more than once, and I witnessed it. Why are you telling me all this? I had to ask, feeling undeserving of her revelations. Hogan, my father, he's not a very good man. After my mother passed, he concealed his affairs until I left for college. Then he began hosting meetings at home and elsewhere, not just for work, but also for some charity groups he's involved with. I know for a fact he's involved with 2 other women from these groups. One poor woman genuinely believes it's true love and plans to leave her husband. Is this what Kelly's considering? I queried. Though I grasped the gravity of what I'd heard, curiosity still nagged at me. Barbara shook her head. No, she sees it as just fun. They say power is the ultimate aphrodisiac. Kelly seems to be living proof of that. I overheard her discussing some senator they were meeting with my dad. So what's your goal here? I inquired. To her credit, Barbara met my gaze squarely as she replied, I want you to end your marriage with this betrayer. I want my father's career to be demolished to the point where he couldn't be elected dog catcher in a town full of cats. I've considered just sending my evidence to the newspapers or even the opposing party, but he has too many allies. I believe together we can make them pay. Won't it complicate your schooling? She tossed her auburn hair. No, my mother left me her inheritance as a trust fund. I haven't touched it. But if need be, I could cover the rest of my tuition and MBA and still have a comfortable cushion left. If your mother had so much money, why didn't she leave with you? She could have gone to Ireland, where your father couldn't reach. Barbara winced. She was raised Irish Catholic. Divorce was never an option. Despite everything, my mother clung to her faith until the end. That's the only reason I think her end of life was unintentional, as destruction is deemed unforgivable. I found Barbara's truthfulness undeniable. She expressed her desire to ruin her father's career, and my possession of this information didn't bode well for his aspirations. I didn't suspect it to be a trap. If Kelly and Paul wanted to ruin me, they could do so openly in court. This sort of scheme was reserved for the desperate, like me. A plan began to take shape in my mind. I needed Barbara's assistance with a few matters. At the very least, it would gauge her commitment to destroying her father. All right, I consented, but I don't want to destroy him by releasing these photos or even naming him in the divorce. Barbara looked surprised. Why not? She demanded, her face flushing with fervor, ready to launch into a speech. I halted her with a raised hand. I'm not saying we won't ruin him, but I'd rather avoid the negative press of a betrayed husband in a political scandal. Instead, I want to dismantle what he's strived for all his life, erode his power and influence. And I can achieve a smooth, low-profile divorce without causing any concern. Barbara gazed at me in shock. A minute later, a cunning smile crept onto her face. What's your request? I grinned. I'll do what I excel at. Get me his financial records, personal and campaign-related. They nailed Capone on tax evasion. Having met your father, I'm confident I'll find something. And if not? She inquired. I smiled. I have another plan. For the next 3 days, Barbara and I were occupied. She installed a keystroke recorder on her father's personal laptop and home computer, also backing up his hard drive. We configured their security system to sync records to a cloud space I controlled located abroad. As for me, I refrained from monitoring Kelly's phone. With Barbara's evidence, I didn't require anything else. I activated a GPS tracker intended for parental use, primarily relying on cell towers for location unless I initiated GPS activation. I simply didn't want her interrupting me at home while I worked. The day after Barbara's initial visit, I feigned a groin injury as an excuse to avoid closeness with my wife. After learning about Paul's numerous partners, I wasn't willing to take any more risks than I unknowingly had. Plus, I doubted I could do it without my anger erupting. I also scheduled an appointment with the doctor for STI testing. Initially, nothing was detected, but some, like HIV, can take months to register antibodies. Kelly departed for the Pittsburgh conference, her excitement tinged with irritation. It was no surprise she looked forward to the trip, yet despite everything, a part of me still loved her. I could never trust her again, but my feelings remained. However, the thought of being carnal with her after what I discovered was unbearable. On Thursday morning, Kelly, packed and ready, awaited Paul and the junior lawyer joining them for the conference. I wondered if the young man knew he was their cover. I'll be back Sunday afternoon, Kelly informed me after dropping her bag by the front door. Seated at the table, I sipped my coffee with my back to her. She embraced me from behind, her lips close to my ear. I hope you'll feel better so we can focus on the baby, she whispered. her voice stirring memories of happier times. I fought back tears, managing to compose myself. "I'll apply ice to speed up the healing," I assured her, stroking her hand and kissing her forehead. She murmured, "I wish I didn't have to leave. It'd be better to stay home with you and be undressed all weekend." "You could always tell Evans something important came up," I suggested spontaneously, sensing a shift in her tone as she regarded me. "What's your issue with Paul?" she asked incredulously. "You seemed rude at the party, and now you speak as if you despise him." I forced myself to calm down, shrugging. "Honestly, I've seen too many arrogant idiots like Evans who think they're untouchable and the epitome of power. They're big fish in small ponds, peddling the illusion of power and manipulating people into believing it. Like that mayor in South Carolina last year. Big shot, embezzled city funds, and slept with 3 married women. Now he's in federal prison for 10 years, and they're all divorced and publicly shamed. Evans gives off the same vibe. If he gets to Washington, he'll be preying on clueless interns within a week. But eventually, his facade will crumble. And when it does, I wouldn't want to be caught in the fallout." Kelly gazed at me, taken aback. While I'd ranted about such individuals before, I'd never linked Evans with them until now. Perhaps I should have kept quiet, but releasing those feelings felt cathartic. Despite the end of our marriage, I believed it was fair to warn Kelly that I still harbored love for her, even though trust was irreparably broken. "Hogan, that's awful what you said about Paul," Kelly objected. "He's a good person who's done a lot for this district." "He's not like that." I detected a pleading undertone in her denial. Unexpectedly, the sound of a car horn outside interrupted us. "Paul's here," Kelly sighed in frustration. She shot me a look that swiftly transformed from remorse to fear. "I'll be back in 4 days," Kelly said, conciliatory. "We can discuss it then. But brace yourself, love. We have a child to focus on." She embraced me, kissing me fervently. I reciprocated with equal passion. "Have a good week," she whispered. "I love you." "I love you too," I replied. She grabbed her bag and opened the front door. "Goodbye, dear," she called over her shoulder. "Farewell, Kelly," I responded before closing the door. 30 minutes later, I departed by train for the city where Barbara and I had an appointment with the FBI. As it turned out, I didn't need to gather any evidence. I'd rate Paul Evans's embezzlement tactics as moderately clever. Barbara and I convened at her off-campus apartment to scrutinize the documents she'd extracted from his computer. Overall, his methods were fairly standard. I estimated he had about $2 million tucked away in an offshore account, at least according to the transfers. However, I couldn't confirm if it still existed as those records weren't included. Much of this money came from small donors unlikely to attract IRS attention. But why were out-of-state individuals donating to the DA's campaign? I managed to trace some to defendants whose cases had been dismissed or had received unusually lenient plea agreements. However, Barbara unearthed the biggest bombshell. Turns out she wasn't Evans's only child. Along the way, he fathered children with 2 other women. One was born 3 years before his wife's end of life, with his mother being one of his employees at the time. The 3rd child, born 8 months after his wife's passing, was from an 18-year-old hospital volunteer. Evans compensated each woman $2,000 a month as campaign consultants for poll research. Barbara nearly wrecked her apartment in a fit of rage. That fiery red hair was quite the warning sign. By the time Kelly and Paul departed, we had combed through everything in Paul's records. Some questions lingered, but we lacked the resources to delve further. So, I documented my findings and arranged a meeting with the senior FBI agent I collaborated with in the Philadelphia office. Barbara accompanied me to recount the fabricated tale we'd concocted. She claimed that after taking a forensic accounting course, she wanted to examine real documents and innocently decided to peruse her father's notes. Upon noticing discrepancies, she contacted me due to my wife's employment with her father and my experience in the field. Gary was a seasoned pro, sensing there was more to it, but we handed him a wrapped gift to avoid further inquiry. A corrupt prosecutor in his backyard, now aiming for a Senate seat, this career boost felt heaven sent. Barbara had a late class, so we hailed a cab to her place, and I walked to 30th Street Station for the train home. Thoughts of packing and leaving crossed my mind. When Kelly returned, Gary pledged to expedite the case, aiming to subpoena Evans's documents by Wednesday. Once the investigation leaked, the idiot would realize his power was ephemeral as his allies abandoned ship. Kelly called during my train ride home, citing a late dinner and likely absence from her room tonight. Sensing my distraction, she probed, and I vaguely mentioned an FBI meeting, citing ongoing investigation constraints. "This case seems to weigh on you," she remarked, seeking hints. Succumbing to temptation, I hinted at corrupt politicians, bribery, money laundering, and scandalous affairs. "Oh, you're no fun," she pouted. "Don't worry, love. Your secret's safe," I assured her. Upon returning home, I sat in awe. A decade-long marriage was ending. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt like a spectator watching my life fade away. Hours passed before I stirred from my reverie, realizing I needed a change. Ironically, as I mowed the lawn, a BMW pulled up. Watching Barbara emerge, her statuesque legs, wrapped in sandals reminiscent of ancient Greece, caught my eye. Her toga-like dress, semi-sheer and clinging to her curves, accentuated her allure. Long red hair framed her face, but it was her gray-green eyes and warm smile that captivated me as she approached. I shut off the engine and greeted her. "You're looking better than I expected," Barbara remarked. "I half expected to find you drowning in a bottle or contemplating a ledge." I chuckled. "Last night I entertained thoughts of both, but it had to be done," I explained. "And it serves as a distraction." "Have you seen a lawyer?" she inquired. I shrugged. "Met with one on Tuesday before they left. Documents will be ready Monday. Agreed to audit a client in Austin, leave Tuesday, and stay the full 3 weeks instead of my usual remote work." I shrugged again. "It might seem like avoiding, but I'd rather not be around when the chaos erupts." Barbara nodded knowingly. She understood the attention it would draw as the daughter of that man. "It's good you're planning ahead," she acknowledged. "It's what you're good at." She grinned. "Now I can plan too." "All right, here's my plan," Barbara announced. "I'll help you wrap up your work here, then you'll join me. We'll have some fun, maybe even get a little wild. I've got a swimsuit you'll adore." I tried to protest. "I'm still married," I pointed out, "and I don't think I'll be ready for anything anytime soon." "You need to blow off some steam before you blow a gasket," she insisted with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "And besides, you know what they say, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander." Her gaze was teasing, yet sincere. I couldn't help but laugh. In a twist of fate, we bumped into Olivia after finishing the yard work. After freshening up, we headed to a nice restaurant for a late lunch. I wasn't in the mood for revenge physical engaging, but it felt good to step out, especially with someone as sweet as Barbara. Approaching the restaurant, I spotted Olivia's car parked outside. I almost suggested to Barbara that we find another place, but I didn't. Instead, I did something totally out of character. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision. Despite all my careful planning, something inside me snapped when I saw Olivia's car in that parking lot. Casually, I embraced the red-haired beauty and guided her into the restaurant. Without much ado, I slipped the owner a tip to ensure we were seated at a specific table, somewhat secluded but still visible from certain angles. Seated, I positioned Barbara to face outward and took a seat beside her, holding her hand. "What's this about?" she asked with a sweet smile. "Not that I'm complaining," I chuckled. "Remember how I told you about finding out about my wife's affair? About her friend Olivia? Well, her car is parked right out there." Barbara erupted into laughter. "So I'm the other woman. Well, I can handle that," she joked, leaning forward to give me a soft kiss on the lips, a promise of more to come. Our food arrived, and I found myself thoroughly enjoying the moment, forgetting all about the impromptu setup as I relished Barbara's company and her witty banter. "I've never heard counting sound so naughty," she quipped, making me laugh. Glancing back, I spotted Olivia walking past us. I pointed it out to Barbara. "Oh my God," she giggled. "This is too good." Leaning in for another kiss, I felt my hand instinctively move under the table, resting on Barbara's leg. Her skin was incredibly soft, her muscles firm yet elastic. The touch sent shivers down my spine, and I was lost in the moment until Olivia's sudden outburst cut through the air. "Hogan, what the hell are you doing?" she yelled, drawing everyone's attention. "And who's this tramp you're flaunting while your wife's away? I expected better from you." I released Barbara's hand and turned to face my ex-girlfriend. "What's your problem, Liv? It's just a little carefree physical engaging before Kelly and I settle down and have a baby. And could you keep it down? People are trying to eat," I said, trying to brush off Olivia's shocked expression. "What?" she began, clearly taken aback. "Oh, come on, Liv. Kelly does the same. I'm sure she's having fun with her boss right now, and she's been at it for months. So I figured it was only fair that I seduced the boss's daughter." Olivia looked like she was about to have a heart attack. Sensing Barbara starting to giggle, I gently squeezed her hand to quiet her. "You know about Olivia?" she stuttered. "I know that I must be a faithful, clueless husband, while my wife runs around with the help of a woman I considered a close friend," I retorted with disdain. Olivia winced at the contempt in my voice. I know Kelly wanted to try something else one last time before having a baby, like that last fling before the wedding, if it was normal for her. What do you have against me? I had no evidence of Kelly having affairs before Paul, but once a cheater, always a cheater, as they say. I threw my suspicion out there, wondering if Olivia was unstable enough to confirm it. She did. Do you know about this too? She sighed. No, but thanks for the confirmation, I replied. Olivia paled at this. Go away, Olivia, I said firmly. She turned and hurried away from the table. A few minutes later, we heard a commotion. It was Olivia leaving the restaurant. Well, it was fun while it lasted, Barbara said with a slight laugh. I really wanted her to stick around longer. Her smile made me blush. You know she's probably on the phone with your wife right now, she added. Perhaps, I agreed. I give her 5 minutes before my phone starts ringing. But if she left now, it's a 5-hour drive back home from Pittsburgh. That gives us time for dessert and for me to pack up and head home. It's a shame I won't get to see you in that bikini you promised. Barbara laughed again. Oh well, maybe another time. She reached out and grabbed my shirt, pulling me closer. You know, my semester ends in a week and a half, she murmured in my ear. I've always wanted to see Austin. Her words barely registered as her tongue slipped into my ear. Kelly started calling me. 10 minutes after Olivia left the restaurant, I listened to a few of her enraged messages, almost finding it comical. After an hour of her relentless messages and texts, I blocked her number. I knew she might call from another phone eventually, but she was driving back from Pittsburgh, unable to simply borrow someone else's phone on the highway. When I got home, I packed up all my personal belongings, not just what I needed for the trip to Austin. I had time. 4 hours after encountering Olivia, I departed from my home, possibly for the final time. After securing a hotel room near the Philadelphia airport, I placed most of my belongings in storage until I secured permanent accommodation. I had several phone conversations with Barbara, who was out walking with a friend, due to her father bombarding her with angry messages. I rescheduled my flight to Austin for the following day and departed on Monday morning. Despite Kelly's repeated calls from different numbers, filled with tearful accusations about how I had ruined her life and career, I remained resolute. Olivia's initial outburst drew attention, leading to a comment on a blog that accurately depicted Barbara and me as players in the unfolding drama. My remark about Kelly's involvement with Paul during their weekend in Pittsburgh stirred controversy within the county's political and legal circles. For the rest of the week, I avoided most news from Philadelphia. It wasn't until Friday that I received a letter from Margaret, a senior manager in the DA's office, surprisingly apologizing for the ordeal. Margaret acknowledged Paul's extramarital affairs, but claimed ignorance about Kelly's involvement. She commended me for using legal means to seek retribution against the lawyer. The following week in the DA's office was tumultuous, with Paul attempting to deflect blame onto his daughter's rebellion influenced by her unfaithful husband. However, his arrest on Tuesday, followed by dramatic scenes at the courthouse, changed the narrative. In her letter, Margaret recounted how Paul was arrested during a meeting in his office, shocking everyone present. He was swiftly taken into custody and paraded past reporters. Margaret expressed regret for the turmoil and offered assistance, acknowledging my undeserved predicament. While part of her letter seemed aimed at damage control, I believed Margaret's sincerity stemmed from her moral and professional integrity. My plans for a discreet divorce were shattered by my impulsive encounter with Olivia. Paul's arrest garnered media attention, turning our story into headline news, characterized by romance, betrayal, and revenge. Thankfully, being out of town shielded me from the worst of the media frenzy. Moreover, booking a separate hotel room further obscured my whereabouts, frustrating attempts to track me down. However, upon checking in, I noticed reporters stationed around the hotel, hoping to catch a glimpse of me. On TV, I saw them camped outside my house, filming my relatives coming and going, while Kelly remained indoors. Barbara faced the harshest scrutiny as the daughter who betrayed her father. Despite having to attend classes and take exams, she became an easy target for the media in the initial days. Eventually, the school intervened, forcing reporters off campus for disturbing students. Additionally, 2 women who had children with Paul sought their 15 minutes of fame, adding to the media frenzy. With her final exams completed, Barbara quietly slipped away from campus and headed to the airport. Disappointed, but not entirely surprised, the media missed her absence from the graduation ceremony. As time passed, the story receded to the sidelines, resurfacing only when Paul's trial began. His guilty plea resulted in a 20-year federal sentence, sparing Barbara and me from testifying. Subsequently, the case faded from public attention, taking Barbara, Kelly, and me with it. Surprisingly, my divorce proceeded swiftly and without much drama. Kelly signed the papers and 4 days later sent a letter expressing remorse for her actions. She acknowledged her hypocrisy upon learning of her own infidelity and requested a meeting to apologize in person when circumstances permitted. She ended by expressing eternal love and good wishes before relocating to the Midwest to live with her aunt. My involvement in uncovering Paul's crimes elevated my career, earning me recognition from the FBI for analyzing his tapes. Embracing anonymity from the media, I excelled in my work in Austin, identifying not only the sought-after embezzler, but also a second perpetrator unknown at the time. My firm promoted me to lead the white-collar crime team, affectionately dubbed Hogan's Heroes by some. Working late became enjoyable, especially with the company of my new assistant, a recent college graduate eager to gain experience in forensic accounting. And that bikini looked even better strewn across the floor of my hotel room.
Husband falsely accused of cheating gets epic revenge after catching wife flirting at a party. Hey, who's that handsome guy? Both Cindy's husband, Jim, and their friend Barbara were taken aback by her question even before they stepped through the backyard gate. Barbara followed Cindy's gaze and spotted a friend of Adam, Cindy's brother-in-law. Just so you know, I'm right here, Jim reminded his wife. What? Can't I admire a good-looking guy when I see one? She retorted. Well, if you're going to check out some guy, I'd prefer if you kept it to yourself. Jim responded a bit bluntly before shifting his focus to their host. Hi, Barb, sorry about that. Barbara and her husband Tony were hosting an outdoor birthday party for their daughter, who had just turned 13. Barbara saw them approaching, but hadn't greeted them yet. She chose to overlook Cindy's question. No worries, you two. Come on in, she said, still holding the gate. Where should these go? Jim asked, holding up a case of beer. There are a few coolers by the tree filled with ice, Jim. Some have soft drinks for the kids, but the others are for the beer. Just pick an empty one. Gifts go on that table over there, she directed Cindy, who was carrying a nicely wrapped box. Tony, the CO host, spotted them and came over to welcome them. Hey, welcome you two, he said, kissing Cindy on the cheek. Jimbo, let me test a smile. Yeah, sounds like she's ready to trade me in for a younger guy. That'll be the day, Barbara quipped, giving Jim's arm a playful slap. Well, come on in, you guys, Tony said. Barb, why don't you show Cindy where to put the gifts? When Barbara saw the expression on her husband's face, she understood exactly what he was implying. He hoped she would inquire about Cindy's behavior. En route to the gift table, she lowered her voice to ensure no one else could overhear. Okay, Cin, what's happening? Did you and Jim have an argument or something? What do you mean? Don't give me that. We've all been friends for a long time, and I've never heard you speak like that in front of Jim. Something's up. I'm just giving him a taste of his own medicine. He's out all day flirting with every pretty girl he sees. You know Linda Kingston? Yeah. She saw Jim in a restaurant a few days ago. He obviously didn't notice her. She told me the waitress came over and kissed him. They talked and laughed through lunch, flirting the whole time. Cindy, Jim's a friendly, outgoing guy. That's just his personality. Having a girl kiss you is more than being friendly, Barb. It's crossing a line, and you know it. Tony kissed you on the cheek a minute ago. That's different. We've been friends for years. This is some waitress he flirts with when he goes there. I don't like it, and it definitely doesn't pass the wife test. The wife test? Yeah, you know, guys use it all the time, but for them, it's the husband test. A wife shouldn't do anything in public or private that she wouldn't do in front of her husband. Well, what's good for the goose, as they say. So, you chose my daughter's birthday party to give Jim a hard time? Don't worry, I won't do anything drastic. I wasn't even thinking about it until I saw Adam's friend over there. He's perfect. I just want to teach Jim a lesson. Well, do me a favor and don't start any fights, okay? I won't. Besides, look at that guy, he's built like a tank. Jim would be crazy to mess with him. All right. I see more guests coming up the walk, so I have to go do my meet and greet thing. I'll catch up with you later. Remember, no fights, okay? No fights, Barb, I promise. She glanced around and spotted Jennifer, the guest of honor, chatting with her friends. She decided to go over and wish her a happy birthday. Jim had just finished helping Tony with the beer and had the same idea. They both arrived at the same time. Cindy spoke first. Congrats, honey. You're officially a teenager. You can really give your parents a hard time now, she joked. That goes for me too, Jen, Jim added. The congrats part, I mean. I'm not sure about the giving your folks a hard time part, he teased. Jennifer laughed at Jim's joke. It was well known in their circle that she'd had a crush on him since she was a toddler. Thanks, she replied, while giving Cindy a hug and Jim a kiss on the cheek. These are my friends, Coral, Kathy, and Debbie, she introduced. They chatted with Jen and her friends briefly, but Cindy was eager to proceed with her plan to teach Jim a lesson. Hey, sweetie, she addressed the birthday girl. I'm going to go say hi to your uncle. Catch you later. Jim was about to accompany her when he noticed Tony signaling to him. As Cindy began to walk away, he remarked, "Behave yourself." She shot him a wicked glance. Approaching Tony, who was still by the coolers, Jim inquired, "What's up, buddy? Just wanted to give you a heads up." Barb talked to Cindy. "Seems like you've been flirting with some waitress." Cindy caught wind of it and has this idea to teach you a lesson. I'm guessing that's what all this hunk talk is about. Jim pondered for a moment. I have no idea what she's talking about. I haven't flirted with any waitress that I'm aware of. Did she mention where or who supposedly saw me? I'm not sure, she didn't specify, but I think she's planning to use Bob to make you jealous, so try to stay cool, okay? Meanwhile, as Tony and Jim conversed, Cindy approached her target. Hi, Adam. Hey, Cindy, how's it going? All right, I guess. Who's your handsome friend? Adam was taken aback while his friend stood and introduced himself. Hi, I'm Bob. I assume you were talking about me, right? He said with a charming grin. Who else? She replied. Hey, Cindy, Adam interjected. Where's Jim? He's over there chatting with your brother. I'd love one of those, she said, pointing to the beer Bob held. Hey, Adam, why don't you be a gentleman and grab the lady a beer while we get to know each other better? Not wanting to be rude, Adam obliged. As soon as he headed for the coolers, Bob offered Cindy his now vacant seat. As she sat down, she glanced over to see her husband glaring at her. Seeing his reaction only fueled her confidence that her plan was working. She turned to engage in conversation with her new acquaintance. Meanwhile, when Adam reached the coolers, he approached Tony and Jim. Hey, what's up with Cindy? Why, what happened? Jim inquired. She's cozying up to Bob over there. Who's he anyway? Jim asked. He works with me. We're on that big high-rise downtown. I've known him about 6 months. Seems all right, but he's a bit of a ladies' man, and I wouldn't trust him around women. He didn't bring a date? Jim asked. Nah, it was sort of a last-minute thing. He was supposed to play golf today. We got off work last night around, and he got a text canceling. Started complaining about having nothing to do today, so I invited him to the party at least. Jim now understood what his wife was up to, though he wasn't sure how to handle it. He knew Cindy well. Once she got an idea in her head, she wouldn't let it go until she made her point. Ignoring her might push her further, but confronting her might provoke Bob. He aimed to avoid that scenario at all costs. Adam, do me a favor, will you? Just keep an eye on things. Let me know if it starts to get out of hand. Adam acknowledged Jim's instructions and grabbed a cold beer from the cooler before returning to where Bob and Cindy were engaged in conversation. Handing Cindy her beer and pulling up another chair, Adam felt it was time to interject. Hoping Bob would catch the hint, he mentioned having seen the pictures Jim took of the lumberyard fire and praised his talent, wondering if Jim planned to enter the press photographers contest again that year. Though slightly annoyed by the interruption, Cindy politely replied that she assumed Jim would participate. She then informed Bob that her husband worked as a photographer for the Tribune and had won several awards at a state contest for press photographers the previous year. Bob responded with a hint of disdain, acknowledging Jim's presence across the yard. Cindy confirmed it was indeed Jim, a response delivered with a dismissive tone that didn't go unnoticed by Bob or Adam. Bob shifted the conversation, expressing his enjoyment of working with his hands and constructing enduring structures. He then directed a question to Adam, asking for validation, to which Adam could only respond with agreement. Assuming Bob had effectively shut down the conversation about her husband, Cindy immediately resumed chatting with Bob, essentially excluding Adam from the discussion. He felt foolish. He'd heard Bob use that same line about working with his hands on women in bars before. It always seemed to impress them, and here Adam had unwittingly given Bob an opportunity. Feeling he was doing more damage than good, Adam excused himself to wish his niece a happy birthday for what felt like the 20th time. Jim circulated, mingling with the others while closely observing Cindy and her companion. Although none of the men mentioned his wife's interaction with another man, the women began to gossip. Jim overheard Jenny discussing the situation with her friends, mentioning that the man Cindy was with worked as a newspaper photographer. She added that her dad commented on how photographers often find themselves in various challenging situations due to their job. Jenny expressed surprise that Jim hadn't intervened physically. Jim chuckled to himself. It wasn't really Bob's fault after all, it was his wife's. And as frustrated as he sometimes felt, he'd never resort to violence against her or any other woman. Glancing over, he noticed an empty beer bottle next to Cindy's chair, and another in her hand already. She tended to drink more when she was nervous. This wasn't good. Bob had 3 empty bottles beside his chair. Just then, Tony mentioned that everyone seemed to be getting hungry. As he stood by the grill, Jim, preoccupied with Cindy, hadn't even noticed the enticing aroma of grilling meat. Tony then announced the food options available, including burgers, brats, and chicken patties, along with various sides on the nearby table for everyone to help themselves. Jim thought it might be a good opportunity to separate Bob from his wife. Perhaps they could find a quiet corner to eat, and he could learn more about this person he was supposedly flirting with. As he turned toward them, he saw the potential lovebirds setting their beers down beside their chairs and standing up. Apparently, Bob had decided that Cindy was his for the day and possessively took her by the elbow. Not happening, Jim muttered to himself. He quickly walked over. "Excuse me, could you remove your hand from my wife?" Bob immediately released Cindy's arm and raised both hands in a conciliatory gesture. "Sorry," he half-chuckled. We're just heading to get some food." "Yeah, well, I can handle it from here, thanks," Jim retorted angrily. He grasped Cindy's other elbow and led her over to the food table. "What's gotten into you?" Cindy questioned. That was incredibly rude. Ignoring his wife's remark, Jim guided her in front of him as they joined the food line. "Grab some food," he stated flatly. "You and I are going to have a talk over by the shed while we eat." Observing the confrontation between Jim and Bob, Adam seized the chance to speak to his colleague, now alone for the first time in a while. "What are you doing?" he asked, irritated. "She's married to one of my brother's closest friends. Leave her alone." "Hey man, you should be telling her to leave me alone. She's the one hitting on me. I'm just being polite." "Polite my foot. Seriously, Bob, cut it out. Look, if you think you stand a chance with her, forget it. She's using you to get back at Jim over some waitress. Stay out of it. Listen, married or not, I've never turned down a beautiful woman like that in my life. I know women, and I think you're mistaken about her using me. She's genuinely interested, I can tell. I think you should leave. This is my niece's birthday party, and I don't want any trouble. All right, I'll back off. If she approaches me again, I'll send her right back to her husband, all right? If you don't, you're out of here, Bob. I mean it." "Scout's honor," he responded, holding up the Boy Scout salute. "Now, can I go get something to eat?" "Yeah, go ahead." Cindy wasn't particularly bothered by Jim stepping in between her and Bob. They had only known each other for a few hours, yet he was already becoming overly familiar, not to mention the suggestive comments he was making. Although it amused her to see how easily she could manipulate a man like that when she wanted to, still, she could sense from the way Jim had taken hold of her arm that she had pushed her husband as far as she should. She had promised Barbara no drama, and Jim had proven he wasn't intimidated by Bob's physique. She needed to spend the rest of the day with her husband. She just hoped he had learned his lesson. They both filled their plates with food, and Jim gestured toward the shed, away from the crowd. When they found a quiet spot, he handed Cindy his plate. "Here, hold this while I fetch a couple of chairs. I'll be right back." Despite his anger, Jim remained a gentleman, holding the back of her chair as Cindy sat down. He pulled his own chair alongside so they could talk privately. After a few bites, Jim couldn't contain himself any longer. As he was always direct, he questioned Cindy about the talk regarding him flirting with a waitress, expressing his dislike for such games. Cindy responded by saying she wasn't certain about the exact details, but that it supposedly occurred sometime last week. Jim remarked sarcastically about the vagueness of the information. Cindy then suggested that Jim might have a better understanding of the situation than she did, questioning if he flirts with every waitress. Surprised, Jim interjected, asking if he was told he kissed them. Cindy confirmed this, leading Jim to assert that there were only 2 possibilities. Either it was a mix-up or someone was feeding her lies, as he had only kissed Cindy since they started dating. Cindy gazed into his eyes. Though she usually felt she could gauge his honesty through his gaze, she wasn't entirely sure, as he had never lied to her as far as she knew. Why would someone claim they saw you kissing a waitress if it wasn't true? "Beats me," he shrugged, taking another bite from his burger. "Since she's your friend, ask her." "How do you know it's a woman?" "It better be a woman. If a male friend told you he saw me kissing a waitress, then you've got your answer." Initially, Cindy entertained the thought that he might have seen her friend in the restaurant and kissed the waitress anyway, disregarding the potential consequences. But she wasn't sure what he meant by his last statement. "What do you mean, if it's a man? I've answered my own question. Simple, if it is a man, he's into you and trying to stir up trouble between us. He's probably hoping to cozy up to you by playing the supportive friend." "That's absurd." "Is it? Think about it. Was it a man? No. All right, then we're back to square one. You'll have to ask your friend why she's misleading you. An uneasy silence followed as they both finished their lunches. When they were done, Jim had a few parting words. This is Jenny's birthday party, and I won't let it be spoiled by a fight with your friend. So if you keep cozying up to him like you have been, I'll just leave you here, and you can find your own way home. Or you can spend the night with Mr. Muscles, but then you won't have a home to come back to. Understand? She was taken aback by his intensity. Jim, calm down. I'm not going home with Bob. I wasn't even considering it. I was just trying to show you what it feels like to have your spouse flirting with someone else, that's all. Well, now you've shown me, so let's end it here. He stood, took his wife's paper plate and empty beer bottle, and walked over to dispose of them. As he turned back, he was relieved to see his wife right by his side. Bob, however, was displeased. He had been sneaking glances at the two of them talking while he sat alone eating his chicken patty. He had no doubt Cindy was genuinely interested. She was eager for action. However, he also acknowledged the need for discretion. Earlier, he had hoped for an opportunity to slip away with her, perhaps to an upstairs bedroom or his car, but now such plans were off the table. They were being watched. He'd have to postpone indulging his desires, at least for now. Despite their underlying tensions, Jim and Cindy were determined to enjoy the rest of the party. She stuck close to him for the remainder of the day, occasionally drifting off to chat with friends, but always returning to his side. The only other interaction Cindy had with Bob was during the group rendition of Happy Birthday, when everyone gathered around Jenny's cake. Bob took advantage of the moment to sidle up beside her and discreetly touch her backside while everyone sang. Initially, she assumed it was Jim, but when she glanced over, she saw Bob wearing a smug grin on his face. She was stunned by his audacity. Glancing around quickly to check for any observers, she found everyone focused on Jenny. Normally, she would have reacted by slapping him, but she knew it would only stir up trouble, something she desperately wanted to avoid. Besides, she realized it was partly her own fault for encouraging him. If given the chance, she'd apologize to him and make it clear she wasn't interested. He withdrew his hand to join the applause as the birthday girl effortlessly blew out the candles. Jim glanced over when he heard Bob's voice nearby, but saw nothing significant. Certainly, Cindy wasn't about to confess to Jim about Bob's inappropriate behavior during Happy Birthday. Naturally, Bob interpreted her silence as assent. He knew how to manipulate the situation. She had to stay close to her husband to avoid suspicion, but eventually, she would need to slip away to use the restroom indoors. Hopefully, he could catch her alone to arrange a meeting. He'd keep a discreet watch. For those aware of the earlier incident, the perceived threat seemed to have passed. Much to their relief, both Bob and Cindy seemed to be on their best behavior, so, with the possible exception of Jim, they all relaxed and let down their guard. Jim, however, had encountered guys like Bob before, men who thought they were irresistible to women and knew they were rarely dissuaded easily. Just to be cautious, he resolved to continue keeping an eye on the potential troublemaker. The party kicked into high gear after dinner. Tony turned up the outdoor speakers and played background music from Pandora while games were set up. A dartboard was placed on the large oak tree near the shed, and Jenny's friends helped her set up the beanbag toss. Some women gathered card tables for bingo. Jenny and her friends suggested a best-of-3 beanbag game to her parents. Jim and Cindy, Tony warned them about Jenny's skill. Fortunately, the adults won the first game, but the subsequent victories went to the youngsters. After the game, Cindy kissed Jim on the cheek and informed him that she needed to use the restroom and would return shortly. Jim replied that he might challenge Adam to a game of darts. Cindy stopped to chat with friends on her way to the house and was fortunate to find the downstairs restroom unoccupied, so she slipped inside. Adam observed Bob's departure and muttered to himself about it, catching Jim's attention. Jim paused mid-throw and inquired about Adam's comment. Adam clarified, "Bob seems to be leaving without saying goodbye or expressing gratitude for the invitation." Jim turned around and caught a glimpse of Bob exiting through the gate, suggesting that Bob might be upset because Cindy wasn't paying him attention anymore. Adam mentioned that he probably had plans with her. Adam agreed, noting that Bob was skilled at charming women, recounting instances where he had seen Bob leave a bar with attractive women. Jim turned back to the dartboard, taking careful aim when a thought struck him. How would someone enter the house without being seen? They'd leave through the gate, circle around to the front, and enter that way. Handing the darts to Adam, Jim mentioned that he would be right back before making his way toward the back door. Cindy had finished her business and was touching up her makeup. Upon opening the bathroom door, she was stunned to find Bob standing there. Before she could react, he seized her shoulders and pinned her against the doorframe, forcefully locking their lips together. In an instant, had Jim been a split second later, he would have witnessed his wife forcefully pushing Bob away. However, in that moment, she hesitated as she tried to regain her senses. It was then that Jim caught sight of them. He grabbed Bob's shoulder, pulling him away from Cindy, and with a forceful blow to Bob's solar plexus, sent him stumbling back into the washroom, where he collapsed to one knee, gasping for breath. As Cindy's brain struggled to process the rapid events, she felt overwhelmed. It all happened so quickly. She turned to find her husband, but he was nowhere to be seen. Panicked, she searched in every direction, calling out for Jim, but he was nowhere in sight. Then she heard the sound of a car starting. Rushing to the front door, Cindy watched as their car backed out and drove off. Realizing how the situation must have appeared, especially given her previous interactions with Bob, and ignoring Bob, who was still gasping for breath, she dashed out the back door. The first person she encountered was Adam, who was still waiting for Jim's return, unaware of the unfolding drama. "Adam, you have to drive me home now," she pleaded, her voice trembling with panic. Confused, Adam looked at her, trying to make sense of the situation. "Cindy, what happened? Where's Jim?" "He left. He caught Bob kissing me and—" "What, is he hurt?" "No, Bob's still in the house. I'm not sure if he's hurt or not. Jim punched him really hard." Adam couldn't help but smirk. "Jim punched Bob?" Yeah, please, Adam. I have to get home so I can explain what happened. He was so mad, I'm not sure what he's going to do. I'm afraid he's planning to leave me." "I doubt that, Cindy. He's upset, but I don't think he's that upset. You didn't see him just now, Adam. I was the first one here. I doubt I'll be able to get my car out. I'm sure I'm blocked in. Please, Adam." "All right, give me a second to tell Tony we're leaving, and I'll see if we can get out of here." After briefing Tony, Adam returned, confirming their predicament. "Cindy, you'll have to call a cab." "I can't get out, but you can borrow my car." "Are you serious? Thank you." Grateful and relieved, Cindy hurriedly got into Adam's car, knowing she needed to reach Jim before it was too late. There was only about a foot of space between Adam's car and the garage door. He turned the wheel completely to the right and edged forward until his front bumper gently nudged the door. Then he reversed, turning the wheel the other way until his rear bumper lightly touched the car behind him. He repeated this maneuver several times until he could back out onto his brother's meticulously kept front lawn, leaving only about 2 inches of clearance between his car and the one behind. Throughout the journey, Cindy remained silent, lost in her thoughts. She couldn't shake the image of her husband's enraged expression from her mind. His fury was unlike anything she had seen before, and his physical reaction was unprecedented. As they approached her driveway, anxiety gripped her. She dreaded facing whatever awaited her at home. Soon they turned into her driveway, with Adam parking behind Jim's car. Adam offered to accompany her inside, but she hesitated briefly before declining, expressing gratitude but insisting that she would handle the situation herself, since she felt responsible for it. Upon exiting the car, she signaled to Adam that she would manage and climb the porch stairs, each step filled with apprehension. Entering the house, she prepared herself for what she might encounter. Jim was nowhere to be seen, and she worried he might be upstairs packing. Just as she began ascending the stairs to confront him, she heard the coffee grinder. A glimmer of hope flickered within her as she thought, "He's making coffee?" Jim, observing her silently from the kitchen doorway, broke the silence by asking if her lover had brought her home. Cindy clarified to Jim that Bob was not her lover, mentioning that the last time she saw him, he was still on the bathroom floor struggling to catch his breath. Jim nodded in response, but remained silent, which unsettled Cindy. She had expected some kind of reaction from him, whether it be anger or embarrassment. Since Jim seemed unwilling to speak, Cindy decided to take the initiative. "He caught me off guard, Jim. I wasn't willingly engaging with him. He ambushed me as soon as I opened the door, pushing me against it and kissing me." "I didn't see you resisting him," Jim shot back. "You intervened before I had the chance. I was stunned. It took me a moment to comprehend what was happening. But you struck him before I could push him away." She still wasn't certain if her husband's behavior indicated genuine calmness, or if it was merely the quiet before a storm. Throughout their conversation, he remained occupied with his tasks. She almost wished he would express his anger openly. His apparent indifference left her feeling anxious. "Well?" she prompted. "Well, what?" he replied, hitting the start button on the coffee maker. "Jim, I've never seen you so angry before. I honestly expected you to be packing your bags when I got home." "Don't tempt me," he growled, his voice rising slightly. "You're damn right I'm angry. That stunt you pulled was immature and disrespectful. The only reason I'm not even more upset is because most people at the party knew what you were doing. But you know what infuriates me more than you making a spectacle of yourself? The fact that you chose to trust one of your shallow friends over me. Have I ever lied to you, huh? His suppressed anger began to surface. Have I ever given you a reason to doubt me or be jealous? No, never. She had never heard him refer to her friends as shallow before, but she chose not to address it. Honey, I know how outgoing you are. I've witnessed it. You can strike up a friendship with anyone in minutes, even women. You may not realize it, but I've seen the way they look at you when you walk away. I know they'd be willing to drop their inhibitions in an instant. Oh, that's ridiculous. You're making me sound like Brad Pitt or something. The situation was escalating. She needed to diffuse it before it escalated further. Jim, all I'm saying is that you have a charming personality. People are drawn to you. I just want you to understand that some women interpret that as flirting. They might think you're available, married or not. She hoped she had eased the tension. So how does that justify you believing that I go around kissing waitresses and trusting your friend over your husband? Damn, she thought. She had hoped to avoid that question. Their argument persisted for another 20 minutes without resolution, both refusing to yield on the fundamental issue of trust. Despite their disagreement, neither of them opted to sleep on the couch or in separate rooms. But Cindy sensed that intimacy was out of the question. He wasn't in a forgiving mood, and she wasn't willing to degrade herself by attempting to change his mind. The following Tuesday, Jim met Tony for a drink after work. Jim was already seated and had just taken a sip from his beer when his friend arrived, wearing a wide grin. Yo, Rocky, how's Adrian? Tony quipped, attempting a Stallone impression. Jim glanced at his friend. Isn't Rocky the one who talks like that? Yeah, but I can't pull off a Burgess Meredith impression, so you'll have to settle for what you— I doubt it. Adam filled me in on what happened before he drove Cindy home. When I went inside, Bob was just getting back on his feet. He mentioned you landed a sucker punch. I sure did, Jim interjected. Well, he was talking about getting back at you, but I warned him to steer clear of you. I told him you're the toughest guy around and that I've seen you take down guys twice your size. I even threw in my favorite Bible quote. You have a favorite Bible quote? I didn't know that. Sure do. Yeah, though he walks through the valley of the shadow of pass away, he fears no evil, for he's the toughest and meanest SOB in the valley. That's you. Jim couldn't help but laugh. That's nonsense and you know it, he retorted. Of course I know it and you know it. But Bob doesn't. I think I scared him enough to make him think twice before messing with you. Well, I appreciate that, buddy. They both grinned and took another sip of their drinks. You know what really annoys me? Jim began. That she doesn't believe me about not kissing some waitress. Are you absolutely sure you didn't? Maybe just a peck on the cheek or something like that? No, he trailed off, and Tony could tell from his expression that he recalled something. Aha, you did kiss her, didn't you? No, she kissed me, Jim responded. Damn, I know what this is all about. The following day, Cindy was surprised to see Jim walking into her office at work. He immediately informed her that he was taking her to lunch. Before she could react, assuming it was his way of apologizing, she expressed gratitude but mentioned it was a bit early and asked if he could wait about 20 minutes. Jim reassured her, saying there was no need to wait. He had already spoken to her boss, explained the situation as a minor family emergency, and arranged for an extended lunch hour, which her boss agreed to. Jim urged her to come along, and Cindy, feeling apprehensive as she wasn't aware of any family emergency, followed him to the car. As she got in, Jim held the door for her. She questioned him about their destination and the nature of the family emergency. He didn't directly answer her question, but instructed her to call her friend and get the name of the restaurant where the alleged incident occurred. When she asked why, he simply told her to trust him and mentioned that he believed he had figured something out. Reluctantly, she called her friend and obtained the restaurant's name, Deary's on Holman Avenue. He responded with a smile, commenting on the coincidence that they were headed exactly there. Cindy remained silent but felt increasingly uneasy. She couldn't fathom why he would want to revisit the scene, except perhaps to confront her. Would he flirt with the waitress in front of her? She knew he wouldn't do that. She decided to wait and see what unfolded. The journey to the restaurant took nearly half an hour, during which Cindy agonized over numerous scenarios. She was almost in tears when they arrived. Jim placed his hand on her back and guided her inside. She knew trouble awaited her the moment they entered. Damn, she muttered quietly. Jim found a booth and had Cindy sit first, then joined her. Well, 'cause looks like you brought your better half today. Cindy blushed with embarrassment. Hi, Marilyn, she greeted their waitress. Hi, Cindy. How did you manage to get my cousin here for a real lunch, and with his wife no less? Every time I see him, he's in such a hurry he can barely eat, she joked. Jim wasn't about to let Cindy off easily. Cindy seems to think you and I are having a passionate affair, he announced. Cindy waited for the punchline before responding. What? No, Marilyn, that's not true. Cindy turned to her husband. Jim, come on, I made a mistake. I apologize. She faced Marilyn again. A friend told me last week that he kissed a waitress here. I didn't even know you worked here. But we haven't, Jim interrupted. You gave me a peck on the cheek when I arrived. Oh gosh, Cindy, I didn't mean anything by it. Jim hadn't visited in a while, and it was just a friendly gesture. Marilyn, don't worry about it, Cindy assured her. I understand now. My friend misled me into thinking Jim had a thing with a waitress here. I'll be giving her a piece of my mind later. I'd like to hear that, Jim challenged. Cindy looked at him and accepted the challenge. All right, she said, retrieving her phone from her purse. Both Jim and Marilyn listened in on Cindy's side of the conversation. Hi, Linda. Not too good. You know that waitress who you said was kissing Jim? You know who that was? Jim's cousin. Yeah, his cousin. No, I didn't appreciate you telling me. You made it sound like he was having an affair or something. I don't care what you thought. I don't care if you think you see him screwing somebody in the middle of the floor. From now on, keep your gossip to yourself. Yeah, you too. She almost hurt her finger disconnecting the call. Jim had a hunch it was Linda stirring up trouble. She frequently made derogatory remarks about her own husband. Cindy was worked up after the call. I truly apologize to both of you. Jim was right. I should have known better. You have a few more apologies to make when you get home tonight, Jim reminded her. You're going to apologize to Tony, Barbara, and Jenny. What about Bob? You can tell Bob to take a hike. You don't pursue a married woman no matter how much of a flirt she is. Marilyn, still standing nearby, asked, Who's Bob? Her boyfriend, Jim joked. Boyfriend? She questioned. Don't listen to him, Marilyn. I made a mistake and he's not done rubbing my nose in it yet. It sounds like you two had quite a weekend, Marilyn observed. Let's just say I'm pretty sure Cindy learned a lesson about trust, Jim replied. Cindy was more than a little embarrassed. Her face flushed as she opened the menu. So Marilyn, what do you recommend? Later after dinner, Cindy spent almost an hour on the phone apologizing to their friends, including Jenny. That night, they both lay undressed in bed. Are you still mad? She asked. It depends. On what? On whether you still think I would cheat on you. I never really believed you'd cheat on me. I was worried you might give some woman the wrong impression. I just didn't want you leading her on. He considered her words and remembered how angry he felt watching her flirt with Bob. He'd never admit it, but he did understand her perspective a bit better now. Just as he was about to tell her he forgave her, he felt her hand slide down his body and start tickling his balls. Come on, honey, you can't stay mad at me, she cooed. Maybe he decided he might not tell her he forgave her just yet. Her fingers gently wrapped around his manhood and slowly started stroking it up and down. Within seconds, he felt himself getting hard. Jim closed his eyes and let out a small sigh as her long red hair teased his skin. The loving touch of her lips sent shivers down his spine as she kissed the head of his fully engorged friend. Oh, God, he groaned. She already knew she was forgiven, but Cindy wanted to take it to the limit. She swung one leg over his torso and guided him inside her. She closed her eyes as she leaned forward, resting her hands on his tight abs as she moved back and forth, driving him deeper and deeper. Oh, babe, I'm not going to last long, he groaned. Me either, she replied. Moments later, she threw her head back as her body stiffened. That was Jim's cue, and it was right on time as they both surrendered to an intense pleasure. A month later, Cindy and Barbara were having lunch together. You and Jim seem to be getting along. Does he still flirt with waitresses? Not as much, Cindy replied. He's still his friendly self, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I love that about him, but he does seem to pull back now and then. That's all you really wanted, isn't it? Exactly. Barbara had to ask her next question, even though she thought she knew the answer. So, have you heard from Bob lately? No, and I'm a little insulted, to tell you the truth. One punch, and he just disappears. The wimp. They both laughed at that.